Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ferndale City Council meeting for Monday, August 10, 2015. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Lennon, Martin, Polika,
Here.
Piana, here, and Mayor Coulter.
Here, thank you. We have a quorum tonight, just barely. Councilman Martin was under the weather, and Councilman Lennon is up north this week on vacation. So.
I move to excuse their absences.
I second.
All right. What do we need to do with that, Mike? We all in favor of that, or?
Yes.
I can call the roll.
All in favor? Yeah. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Well, you're supposed to do that, Marnie. All right. The absences are excused. The next item of business would be the approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
All right.
If I could, Mayor, there was a proposal to add as a new 7A1,
That's right.
a resolution to schedule a public hearing, if you were inclined to add that to the agenda.
I do. And it's the approval of a resolution to schedule a public hearing regarding the vacation of a portion of Chesterfield and Fern Street. It's related to 7A. We'll call that 7A1.
Yes, I would like to amend as stated,
All right.
Adding item A,
a 7A1.
7A1.
I would also just note, because Councilman Martin isn't here and he was going to do the Housing Commission update, we won't have that presentation tonight. But I do see two of our elected officials here, and we'd like to give them an opportunity to present any updates to council if they like. So we could add A and B being our state representative Wittenberg and County Commissioner Zach under presentations, if that's acceptable.
That is acceptable.
All right.
I support the changes.
Any other discussions on the agenda? All right, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Polika,
Yes.
Piana,
Yes.
and Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The agenda is adopted. So now moving on to presentations. And so Representative Wittenberg, always good to see you in the House. You want to come up and give us any news or updates from Lansing?
Sure. Do I choose, or do I just pull them together here? We'll put them
that's
together.
fine.
All right. Wasn't sure, actually. So nothing really new to report in Lansing, unfortunately. We were in session a few days in July, and then we'll be back in session next week. So while I was in the district, though, we've been busy. We've been out going door to door throughout the community. We were here in Ferndale, hit quite a few areas here in Ferndale. So for those of you at home, if there was something left on your door, we knocked on some of the doors, but we were during the daytime, so a lot of people might not have been home, but we left some information, and that's what I gave to you, Mayor and council members. A couple different things. One is just kind of a flyer, has all my contact information, has some useful tips on here, reasons why you might want to reach out to me and contact me, stuff for state government. Also has some important phone numbers, so it's something good to hold on to. For state agencies, Oakland County Resources, and again, my contact information on here as well. So we've been out going door to door, just checking on residents and seeing if there's anything we can help with, and giving this to them as something useful and something to hold on to, so that people know that we are active and in the community and here to help. The other reason I just wanted to come make people aware about a town hall that we're hosting this week. It's on Wednesday, and it's called Redrawing the Lines, a Fair Solution to Legislative Redistricting. So it's a town hall about redistricting and gerrymandering, and have two great presenters, Mark Schauer, former congressman, and Mark Brewer, who is a elections lawyer, does a lot of political related activities over at Goodman Acker Law Firm. Both of them pretty extensive resumes, and they're going to speak about gerrymandering and redistricting, and obviously this is something I think is a big issue that we need to address Because currently, the way our system works, and, you know, in the past, Democrats, Republicans, who knows? I mean, people could take advantage of it. We want to take the legislators out of choosing who they represent. We want residents and constituents to choose who their representatives are. So I think it's just a fair thing that we really need to look at addressing here in the state of Michigan. So it's this Wednesday for anyone at home and anyone listening here. This Wednesday, August 12th, 6:30 p.m. The doors open 7 o'clock. The presentation will start at the Berkeley Collaborative Center, which is at 2325 Catalpa Drive. My alma mater, a proud Berkeley Bear. So excited to go back there. So it's this Wednesday, 6:30 are the doors, 7 p.m. the presentation starts. Again, it's on redistricting and gerrymandering. So we encourage anyone, it's free and open to the public. Bring friends, bring family, anyone that might have an interest in this. There was an article in the Free Press, which I know you were talking about. I'm sure some other people saw. So just, you know, trying to make people aware that the system is rigged, unfortunately, and I think we need to have nonpartisan or bipartisan organizations that, you know, that are not doing it for their own self-interest. So I think it's something that's very important. Again, excited to host this town hall. Any other questions? Anything else I can address? That's pretty much it. It was just brief. Wanted to come say hello and check in. And keep you
Appreciate
up to
it.
date.
Thanks. I'd encourage people to tune in and turn out to your town hall. It's an important issue, so thanks for hosting.
And then again, if you ever need anything, if people at home ever need anything, please reach out to me. Anything we can do to help, we will do. And if we don't know the answer, we'll hopefully point you in the right direction. So thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for stopping by.
The location is at Berkeley High School in the Collaborative Center, which is 2325 Catalpa Drive. So if you're at Berkeley and you're going, let's say you're going east on Catalpa from Coolidge, there's the circular drive right there. It's straight back from there. It's like with all the windows out front, you know, just past that circular drive. So it's the Collaborative Center. It was the cafeteria when I was there. So, but it's right there.
And that information on your website as well?
It's on my website,
There you
absolutely.
go.
If you go on the wittenberg.housedems.com, you can get that, all that information. If you have any questions, call me or email me. So
6:30 Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you. And our County Commissioner, Helene Zach, is also with us this evening. Good evening, Commissioner.
Good evening, everybody. It's good to be here. I did pass out new county directories to council, and I left some others out there. I do want to call attention to the cover of this. Our clerk, Lisa Brown, put a real amendment vote from a community that showed that an amendment lost by one vote, illustrating how every vote counts. So I just want to make sure as we move into elections in the fall that people take the time to vote, because your vote does make a difference, and I think that's a great message for everybody. We've started the Oakland County budget process is going on, and overall, you know, Oakland County's fiscally sound, some previews. One of the things that we are doing in this upcoming budget is we are investing more money in facilities again. During the recession, like most government units, we held off on, you know, building, maintaining facilities, and now that we are stable, we're looking at doing more, and we added an additional $5 million into the Oakland County budget for facilities. One of the facilities that we are strongly considering, and I'm going to be briefed on it, is a new animal care center. And I know that I've heard from lots of Ferndale residents and many people talking about animal issues and, you know, how do we manage them in Oakland County. And our facility is very old, very broken down, and so we are on our next Finance Committee agenda. We're setting the stage to go into bond financing. There is going to be a proposal on a new animal care center presented to me this week, and I hope to report more. I think it's a long overdue investment for all of us. I do want to remind residents that there still is hardest hit tax help If people are having trouble with their tax payment, contact Oakland County Treasurer's Office. I know I have had to intervene in a couple of messy situations for homeowners recently, and we do have these different services. And we do have Oakland County housing counselors to help people as well. I also want to talk about another pilot project coming up is a healthy lifestyle pilot at Catalpa Oaks County Park. And more details will be surfacing. They're going to have a walking program for residents beyond students, and pedometers will be there. And we're also looking at, in our Oakland County Park, creating more healthy choices as far as food choices in the future, trying to promote that. Finally, I want to thank the city of Ferndale and maybe Councilwoman Piana for applying for funding through SEMCOG, transportation, the TAP funding to look at bike trails.
That's staff. Gotta give credit to
That's staff, and I want to thank you for doing that. It's very exciting that we're going to collaboratively look at bike trails along Woodward and increase that. I think it's great. I rode my bike here today.
Excellent.
I really want more trails, and I really want the lights at 696 in Woodward, that whole traffic quagmire with the expressway. Someday, maybe it'll be improved. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Any
Thank you.
questions for me? And thank you, staff.
Yep. Appreciate it. Thanks, Elaine. Thank you very much. All right. Our next item of business is call to audience. Call to audience is your opportunity to come and address council on any issue that's not on the agenda, because you'll get a chance to address those issues when we get there. But to come on up and you have 3 minutes to come on up and say anything that's on your mind, state your name, your address, and 3 minutes to address council on anything that you'd like to discuss.
Yeah, my name is Mike Adjman at 476 West Troy. And one thing I see in the city is there's constant change, and it's been with the roads, okay, and the bike paths. And I think one thing I noticed is that you started with West Troy, and you shortened the roads to 2 lanes. So we have beverage trucks lining up in the morning, delivery trucks for the restaurants. So now you have to move out and make your way through, people turning. Then you went and did how the west was 1, and you cut that down for parking. But what I see is basically the owners of the businesses parking in those prime spots. And now when someone tries to turn out into traffic from CVS, it's harder to turn out. People won't let you through. There's no movement there. The lanes are smaller. Then you tore up Livernois for the bike path, as much as it was. There was other things you could have done there. And my concern is this morning, I got up and I had to go down 9 Mile, East 9 Mile. And I made it from Allen to 9 Mile. I passed the fire station, looked at the clock, and it was 7:04. It took me 4 minutes. No cars. Okay? The lights seem to be timed. Stop, stop, go, go, stop, stop, go, go. And I'm driving back, and they were doing road construction on West 9 Mile. So then I had to veer out and go into the turning lane to drive around like everyone else. My thing is, we have a fire station right there. So really, you put a light there, you think that's going to help during construction, during rush hour traffic? I think fire trucks, police need more than just 1 lane going down here on 9 Mile. Have you guys thought that out clearly? And then you're talking about tearing up Woodward Avenue. It's another thing, and putting bike paths. We live in Michigan. How 4 months out of the year we can use a bike path? We need to have them, yes, but we need to look at something that will make everyone happy, okay? And I'm just really concerned about the response time from the fire stations. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good afternoon. Dennis Augustin, 1550 Spencer. Now that we got a commissioner here, what is being done about the railroads? Woodhaven was on the news last week. They're blocking our intersections, and they can block them as long as they want. Okay, now we got these bike paths in here, shortened up our lanes. I come in I go around construction down here, not the construction, but the crews working in the sewers, okay? And like that guy just said, we're out there in the middle lane, okay? We're out there in that center lane getting around traffic, okay? What's being done about these railroads?
Address council, though, okay, Dennis?
Well, I'm trying to, but see, the thing of it is she works up at Oakland County.
But that's a city
I
road.
want to take this up to the next level, and that, and I've already brought it to your attention, and this is not a city of Ferndale thing.
It's a city street.
It's everybody, you know, and
Or city
if
project.
the railroad blocks for 8 hours, or says they can, like they did down in Woodhaven, and we go through a half an hour up here to an hour, okay, and we're down to 2 lanes now. I live a couple of miles away, and I've already gone through, when this road construction went on, that traffic was backed up to Wanda, okay? What are we going to do when that train sits there and they just laugh in our face? Okay, when does the county commissions have their meetings? In the middle of the afternoon? When people are working? Is that what it is? I can't take time off to voice my concerns there. I'm taking advantage of my commissioner being right here now.
Okay.
And for that, we're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. We need to address this railroad issue with these 2 lanes and the bike paths. Okay? It's going to drift in. It's going to probably interfere with the police. It's definitely going to interfere with the fire department. Traffic's going to go down through neighborhoods that it's never gone down through before. We need to address this with these. As long as the city is going on this route of bike paths, 2 lanes, 3 lanes, okay, we need to address this issue. We need to step it up. It's got to happen, okay? I'm not making that kind of money to drive down over here to 8 Mile or up here into Royal Oak just to get around to one side of Ferndale to the other, okay? It needs to happen.
Thank you.
I'd like to see something on that in the town, too.
Anyone else like to address the council this evening? Michael?
Hello, it's my annual announcement of the Woodward Dream Cruise coming up this weekend. It's already the 21st annual event that's on August 13th, 14th, and 15th, and it's actually my 10th year organizing the event. So I get to celebrate 10 years. As we all know, that the Dream Cruise was founded here in the city of Ferndale by Nelson House back in 1994 is when he approached the city council about a concept he had to raise funds for a kid's soccer field. Since then, Ferndale has once again become well known as one of the main places to be and to be sharing a good time with many, many other people in downtown Ferndale. For this year, of course, we will celebrate the annual Mustang Alley, now in its 17th year, here on East 9 Mile. On Friday, we'll celebrate the 15th annual event of the Ferndale Emergency Vehicle Show. Along with that, we'll have the official ribbon-cutting ceremony. And for this year's special guest speakers, we're going to first have the pride and joy of our own Ferndale High School band performing to open the event. Our honorable mayor will be our MC for the event. Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard will be here. A representative from the Michigan State Police. Sean Lecker Palmaville, Executive Director for the Motor City's National Heritage Area, will be here as a guest speaker to talk about historical importance of our own Motor City. Detroit Police Chief James Craig will be here. And our very special guest this year is Butch Patrick, a.k.a. Eddie Munster from the Munsters. Here,
I can't tell you how excited I am about that. Truly, if you're in my generation, that's pretty cool thing.
He won't only be here during the ribbon cutting, but he'll be here for all 3 days of our event on West 9 Mile, along with the original restored Munsters family coach and Grandpa's Dracula Roadster. As long as he will also be signing autographs, speaking with people, and he will also have other memorabilia, including his own Eddie Munster outfit that he used to wear when he was a boy.
Gosh, wow.
So there's some fun stuff with that. And, of course, we do have our very popular entertainment, the Rockin' Live entertainment, all 3 days. So I want to invite everybody to come out and have a great time. If you want to know the schedule, please go to FerndaleDreamCruise.com, or you can go on Facebook and just type in Ferndale Dream Cruise, and you can find out more.
And the ribbon cutting on Friday is at what time?
At 5 o'clock, and then
5
immediately after that is the Lights and Sirens Cruise.
Excellent.
Thank
you, Mike, and congratulations on your 10 years of performing this for Ferndale. Great job. Good evening.
Hi. Almost feels like on the spot since some of the previous comments, since I'm talking about the Sierra Club Green Cruise, which is primarily celebrating human forms of transportation like walking and bicycling. And most of our bicycle rides use residential streets, and we don't go on Woodward. Some really good riders, which is not me, can ride like on Sunday mornings very well on Woodward, and they take up their lane and they go and they ride with traffic. So I'm Dave Cottrell, 1610 Bowfield from Sierra Club Green Cruise. I want to thank the City of Ferndale, Special Events, Police Auxiliary, and the DPW, sponsors and nonprofits for their help during the past Saturday Sierra Club Green Cruise. Our Green Cruiser of the Year was Jason Moss, who was the founder of the Slow Roll, a large bicycle ride that goes at let's say an 8-mile-an-hour pace, which is really great for a lot of people who want to just start riding some more. We had 150 people on our bicycle ride to Belle Isle and 30 people on the ride to Birmingham. Around 10 people on our family ride in Ferndale. The parade was well attended with 60 people walking or on their skateboards or carrying the earth ball or riding their bikes. And I'm glad a lot of bicyclists ate dinner afterwards at our sponsors, some of the restaurants near 9 Mile and Woodward, such as Howie's Bayou and Imperial. Thanks to all the people who came to be part of the Green Cruise. So thank you, Ferndale.
And thank you, Dave, for all your work and all the volunteers who put it on. Great job.
A lot of volunteers.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
My apologies, but I forgot to acknowledge Ford Motor Company as our major sponsor who helps fund this event.
Very important.
Forget about my 10th anniversary because I now need to be punished. And I'm also wearing our official Ferndale Dream Cruise t-shirt for this year.
Which are available at City Hall, I'm guessing?
Available
at Dream Cruise.
City Hall, and it will also be in the Dream Cruise tent on Friday and Saturday.
Gotcha. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for your time. Stephen Johnson, 1460 East Chesterfield. I'm here on behalf of myself and some of my neighbors who have speaked on my concern. There was a Ferndale Plan Commission meeting held on July 15th to rezone a district in our neighborhood. I was unable to attend, but I heard that the vote was 4-3 against to rezone, but that the project is still moving forward to rezone that district. So that's my first concern. My second concern is for the rezoning purpose is to put a pawn broker shop into that neighborhood. We do have, I'd say, 2 pawn broker shops within about a half mile of that area, and I'm concerned that some of the people in the neighborhood don't want another pawn broker shop in that area. So my neighbor, I think Robert, has more to say about other things going on with the project. So thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. Thanks for coming. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Council. My name is Robert Alderton. I live on Bennett Street, right behind the proposed pawn shop. I also own a lot directly behind pawn shop. The problem is crime goes up 10% when you put a pawn shop in. It's going to go from 1,000 square feet to 14,000 square feet. City of Detroit, and nobody needs this in this neighborhood or the surrounding neighborhoods. The other problem is a lot of issues with ADA. And the reason why I say that, there's not one ADA parking spot in the 70,000 square foot of buildings. There's about 6 proposed buildings in there right now. Also, there's also, they also think they can just dump their dumpster right in the front. Well, code says you can't do that. And the reason why it needs to be, blocked on 3 sides with concrete, pipe bollards with gates. And he thinks they can do what everybody else does is leave it in the parking lot. Well, we see that every single day. Also, there's a medical supply company right there. That also, they told me that, well, we don't want one of these. We don't want any ADA parking here because we're very limited on parking. They have like 5 spots in front. There's a 35,000 square foot building right next to them, and the most they're going to have is 8 spots. It's 200 feet long, it's only parallel parking. It's also a 19-foot one-way street that comes off of 8 Mile. Well, that's only good for a one-way. 2-way is going to be 24 feet wide. And on top of that, the most parking that they have is up to 13 feet wide, and that's only going to be for parallel. You're going to need up to 18 feet wide if you want to be at 90 degrees. Also, in the same place, there's 3 buildings without any parking. And one of the occupants right now is a detail shop. The detail shop, has about 8 to 10 service stations, if not more, inside. For every service station, you need a parking. For every employee, you need a parking. And they line up to 12 cars on Bennett Street. So we see this every day. They have boats. They have all kinds of cars. They work inside. Work right on the street, buffing their cars. They also dump. They squeeze out all the water from their space onto our street. And also, they actually take their what do we call that? Their vacuum cleaners and dump them right on the street too, right on the sidewalk. And also, there's radiator fluid in our street. There's about 100 foot of it. Last I saw, I reported to Derek. I reported to the city council or the zoning commission. I reported to downtown city, and nobody really cares. The police chief, and even the police department. I mentioned it too. And that goes right into the Redwater watershed, Clinton River watershed, and that's what the water we drink. Okay, and I can go on and on. I did mention something to the email to Ms. Zach over here, and I hope she forwards that information to you. There's a lot of other violations that I kind of written down. I hope you read what I've written. It's not the greatest writing, but thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. And I think Derek might even want to respond to that. Derek Delacourt is our Director of Community and Economic Development.
Yes, just a couple of points of clarification. First, on the rezoning for the residents and everybody involved, the applicant did make a rezoning application regarding the site. The Planning Commission did hold a public hearing and recommend denial of that. As the City Council is aware, the applicant has a right to come to City Council and ask for that rezoning request to be heard. Any rezoning by the statute or by the city ordinance is a recommendation from the Planning Commission and the final decision from City Council, either for or against. So that is the process, and it is the same for any rezoning, regardless of whether it's a pawn shop or not. We are aware of the detail shop where there's been issues. They've been issued violations. The owner of the building has been was given 30 days to submit evidence of eviction papers, which they have done. They are pursuing eviction in district court here to get the applicant out, and they've been made aware that if they don't, they are in operation without a certificate of occupancy, that the owner of the building will be held responsible. So we are allowing him to go through the eviction process, and if that is successful, we won't have an issue. If not, then we'll continue to pursue the owner. So just for clarification.
Thanks, Derek. Is there anyone else that would like to address council this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to our next item of business, which would be the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are items that council considers routine, and we enact in one motion unless council pulls something from the consent agenda. Let me read that for you now. Item A is the approval of the minutes of the regular and special meetings held on July 27th, 2015. Item B is the approval to adopt the resolution authorizing council travel for council members Polika and Piana to attend the MML convention in Traverse City, Michigan on September 16th through the 18th of this year, where Ferndale is up for an award, I understand. Item C is the approval to adopt ordinance number 1164, amending Chapter 13, Parks and Recreation, Article 4, Rules and Regulation, Division 1, Section 13 through 15, Dogs, of the Ferndale City Code, regulating dogs in city parks or playground areas to allow dogs in a park not on a leash if the dog is within an enclosed fence area of any park. Item D is the approval to authorize the city manager to fill the deputy clerk position left vacant due to the promotion of Marnie McGrath into the clerk's position, contingent upon approval from the Civil Service Board. Item E is the approval to authorize the city manager to fill the personnel technician position, now known as the payroll and retiree coordinator, left vacant due to the retirement of Gene Ingram, contingent upon approval of the Civil Service Board. Item F is the approval to authorize the reclassification of Chief Innovation Officer to Assistant City Manager contingent upon the approval of the Civil Service Board. Item G is the approval of a workers' compensation redemption for City of Ferndale Ferndale City Police Officer, as submitted by our HR Director. Item H is the approval for the City Manager to authorize property tax penalty and adjustments, as submitted by the Finance Director. And finally, item I is the approval of the bills and payroll as submitted by the City Manager's office, subject to the review of the Council Finance Committee. What is Council's pleasure on the consent agenda this evening?
I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
All right. Moved by Piana, supported by Polika. Now, is there any discussion on any items on the consent agenda, either from council or members of the public?
I actually have two, Mr. Mayor. The first one is B. We discussed earlier today that Joe Gaucho will also be attending with us. Does this item have to be amended to include Joe? It's just
you guys.
just us. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We need special permission.
Yes, you do.
We do.
My second item
To be
was,
clear, there was a resolution adopted years ago, not that we have to approve all of staff travel, but that any travel of council needs to come and get the approval of council.
makes sense.
Yep.
The second item that I would like some clarification on is, I guess it really doesn't matter. 6E, the technician position. If April could just clarify for a moment, these positions that we continue to talk about from time to time, they are filling existing positions. Since 2010, we have not created a new position. We have not been adding people to our payroll.
No, we have not. The only one we have added was the communications director, but all the rest are just filling positions. And those two were left, as you know, Clerk Tallman left to take a new position, and then Marnie moved into that position. So now we're filling Marnie's position. And then the personnel pay technician retired, and now we're filling her position.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments, questions? If not, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmembers Piana,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
and Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The consent agenda is adopted. Now, moving on to the regular agenda. Item A is the consideration of the CN Railroad expansion. And our city manager, April, you're going to introduce that item?
Let us get situated.
If the slide will stay down. Yes, all right.
Yeah.
Do we need to turn these lights off? Just maybe, might be easier for folks in the audience to see.
For those that are not aware, CN approached the city of Ferndale back in 2014 about adjusting their current footprint over in the Fern Street in Ferndale. They had purchased a few properties within that site and wanted to take a look at what that would look like with their current site configuration. When CN approached the city, they approached us in a way that we call a partnership. In fact, CN was under no obligation to approach us, as they fall under federal exemption of the typical planning that we would have here within the city of Ferndale. So we did engage them in a conversation about what their needs were, and as well as they engaged the city and what our needs were. And it was fitting that Dennis talked about some of the issues that we're having with the train. So even prior to this, we had already started working with CN about some of the train concerns we had about the train stopping at Hilton and 9 Mile in particular. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and how that fits in with today's conversation. So in a nutshell, CN had a few requests compared to what the city had, if you will. We'll talk a little bit about first what CN's request to the city was, and then we'll talk in more detail of what the city, what kind of conversation that the city had with CN in response to that. It was important for CN's course of business and their current footprint to relocate the intermodal facility gate entrance from Fair Street to 8 Mile, which was interesting for us because we knew that that would actually be a direct benefit to that current neighborhood by moving that entrance from Fair Street to 8 Mile. So that was immediately something that we were very interested in. They wanted also the ability to utilize their additional their additional properties that they had purchased that were connected with the intermodal facility, and again, attempt to become more efficient in that site, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, but will in turn help move the trains quicker by being able to use their footprint in a different way that's in a much more efficient manner and help stop some of that, the train interruption. As part of that request, and in fact, I think we have 2 motions tonight on council agenda. One, to approve this agreement with CN, but also to approve the vacation of portions of Chesterfield Avenue and Fern Street, which will is part of their the part of some of the right-of-ways that encroach on the properties that they just had purchased. It also will allow them to have some employee and visitor parking. And that what they also needed from the city was to help support and assist in those approvals for that relocation of 8 Mile. So from the onset, we were very interested in hearing what they had to say, especially after hearing that one of their goals was moving the relocation or moving the intermodal facility gate entrance from Fair Street to 8 Mile. So in turn, we were very fortunate to engage in that partnership because we are actually, the city is going to be getting a lot of, or receiving quite some benefit from some of these adjustments. The biggest one that we're all very excited about, and I think we can hear the train right now.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing, is that we will be one of the first cities in Michigan that will be having quiet zones. We will have 4 of them. We have 4 different train stops along the train within Ferndale, which is why I didn't understand why we had the horn situation would seem so obnoxious, is because we have so many stops right next to each other, so it's a continual horn throughout that time. So we are actually looking to partner with CN. They are going to pay for quiet zones at each location. So that means that what you hear right now will be reduced significantly. It won't go away completely, but it will be minimized significantly. It'll be much more rare to hear it than you actually hear it now. So we are incredibly excited about that. I believe the only other place in Michigan, if I'm not mistaken, is Durand, Michigan, that has a quiet zone. And in fact, we will be the first one that CN will actually be building here in Ferndale. Again, we actually supported and want CN to move that intermodal, the gate entrance from 8 Mile, or from Fern to 8 Mile, which will significantly decrease truck traffic in that neighborhood. Another item that we had discussed was addressing the noise and visual mitigation within that neighborhood, and they have approved to help us with a sound wall and vegetation along Fair Street to help again with that noise and that visual mitigation. And then another big an accompaniment to this agreement that we were incredibly excited about is that CN agrees that they will not expand any further west of Fair Street or east of the tracks beyond its current property. So as you can see, for what CN was looking for as it relates to what we're getting in return, it was important to keep engaging them in that conversation, and also recognizing, again, I can't reiterate enough, that they actually are under no obligation to do so as it relates to because of their federal exemption. You can see here is a visual aid of what the current entrance looks like coming off of Fair Street. And now, sorry, it's a little bit small here, but you can see immediately what that would look like and how that traffic is moved away from that neighborhood and will stay on 8 Mile and go right into their facility. So that should help a lot of that truck traffic in that neighborhood. So again, that's an important part of this agreement. And I think, too, that one of the things that even prior to this agreement, we had been working with CN, and they've actually made some adjustments for us to try to decrease some of that train interruption, in particular along Hilton and 9 Mile. And they also indicated that, again, by making these changes to their current footprint, that will help as well to mitigate some of that train stoppage that has been occurring, in particular at Hilton and 9 Mile. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions from City Council and however you want to begin to have the conversation about this agreement.
Great. I would add that we had a town hall public meeting a week ago tonight, and we invited all the residents and business owners in that area to come out, and we had a good-sized crowd there where we had this discussion. I think some of you folks are back again tonight, and I think maybe we'll start by opening it up to any comments or questions that the public might have before council starts to do their deliberation. So if you'd like to come up to address council on this issue, 3 minutes to speak your piece about what you'd like, what or don't like about this proposal.
I
Yes.
live at 928 Channing. My name
Good
is
evening.
Faith Frederick.
Good evening.
That area where the railroad yard is, there was an agreement made with the city in Grand Trunk in 1991. And I think the city attorney said it couldn't be enforced, and I'm curious as to why.
Mayor, would you like me to
Please.
address these questions as
Yes,
they come
please.
in?
Yeah.
Through the chair, I think the issue was it's an open question. Since in 1995,
No, 1991.
if I could, in 1991 and 1993, the city and the railroad entered into a consent judgment regarding resolution of some litigation. In 1995, the United States government adopted legislation that preempted local land use regulation from interfering with railroad operations. And so that federal statute is at play with respect to the additional properties that CN has acquired and complicates the issue with respect to the existing consent judgments. That's what the issue is. And so on balance, it seemed that the dialogue that the city and CN has engaged in, along with the proposed benefits that have been articulated tonight, provide a benefit. Obviously, ultimately, that's for council's call, but it is an open issue with respect to whether the federal statute would preempt the enforcement of those 1991 and 1993 agreements.
There were court orders.
Yes.
Okay. And then the other issue, it's, you know, I understand the wanting to do the in and out of the 8 Mile. But what I don't think those people understand altogether, they're going to get what I have at the end, and my neighbors have at the end of our streets. And it's not pretty, it's ugly, it's noisy, it's offensive, and it's everything they've promised in those past agreements, they didn't uphold. Just like I'm afraid they're not going to uphold what they're saying to you and yours, even though they came up to you. I've been in that property where I live for almost 30 years. This isn't a new go-round for me. And I have no reason to trust them or believe them, no matter what's on here.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Yes. Yes, sir. Now is the appropriate time.
Thank you.
Yes, good to see you.
I have never in my entire 65 years heard such a bunch of horse poop as I have heard regarding this from last Monday's meeting and this meeting. What I'd like to know is, how did the railroad get to negotiate directly with the city when my 65 employee jobs are concerned? Can you tell my workers who gave you the authority to negotiate away their jobs? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
So this is your opportunity to address us. I take that as a rhetorical question.
I take it as I can't get a yes or no answer.
Obviously, the city has the ability to negotiate with the CN Railroad, sir.
Without notification to any citizen.
I believe you were notified, sir.
Indeed, I was not, sir.
You were there last Monday. I don't know how you caught wind of that meeting, sir, but you were there, right? Were you not?
Yes, I was, luckily. Okay. Luckily, there's a subversive in your city government who informed me about the meeting at 5 o'clock on Thursday, about the meeting on Monday. Now, isn't it nice that I have to go through such lengths as a business citizen of this community to keep my business operating? So I can see you take the strong, silent approach of not doing anything.
So this is your opportunity to address council. I'm not quite sure what you want me to say.
I'd like you to admit how guilty you and the rest of the city council is of
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to address council this evening?
I own an LPAC. I also own the land that they rent.
Good evening, Dennis. Yes.
Dennis Augustin again.
I'm sorry?
The stuff
Wait,
that I did,
excuse me, there's someone that has the floor now. Yes.
the stuff that I just looked at here on the screen, that's nothing new. And the one thing that's missing is years ago, probably, I think it was about 10, 12 years ago, when the people on Chesterfield and Fair and Bennett and Fair and all them were complaining about the truck noise and traffic. Well, there was a route there that was not mapped out on that, where the truck traffic was, okay? I do not see that red line coming across that bridge over 8 Mile and coming and circling around onto 8 Mile to bring the truck traffic exiting out of there. And that was part of the noise reduction and the fact that there was trucks going through there all the time, and there, you know, some of them were revving them louder than usual. Okay. Supposedly part of the solution of this is that there was going to be a route coming over that bridge, circling around onto 8 Mile, and that worked for a little while. It did. It's all shut down. You got the barricades up, just like what we've been used to seeing here in Ferndale, you know, the cement barricades and all that stuff. Put it right across the road there. There is an access to bring that truck traffic out. It was put there a few years back, okay? Now, as far as the railroad goes and expansion and all that, from all the meetings that I've been to, and I'm sorry I missed last Monday because I'd like to have been there again to remind them that I was there as long ago as 25 years ago when we were dealing with this stuff, okay? That guy said that the railroad's full of you know what? I have to agree, because all they have done is laughed in our face. And when you called up back in the day when you could ticket the railroad, and you called up to complain like I do, because I used to live, or I still live where I do back now as where I was back then, that garage to fix the box cars is now shut down. But that slammed and banged all night long, okay? And I complained about the noise. I'd call the railroad. The guy would laugh. Oh, I live in Holly, or I live over here. I don't live here. And he was laughing on the phone. Okay. The quiet zone, I brought that up a long time ago, because those of us who've been living in the city for a lot of years remember the old Ardmore Hospital. There were signs out there, the quiet zone, you know, okay? I brought that up years ago about the railroad. Nothing we can do, nothing the people can do, nothing our city government can do. This railroad is just laughing in our face, and they're riding it out. You're going to work out your negotiations, and you're going to turn around and end up, we're all going to get screwed again. They haven't changed their mindset at all in 24 years, especially since I've lived on the other side of the railroad tracks. I didn't realize how much of a problem it was until I moved to the other side of the railroad tracks. Okay? I don't trust them. As far as I'm concerned, you can get them the heck on out. Okay? Look at what you already got there. Send somebody over there and look at it and put that road back in there and get those barricades out of the way and get that traffic going on to 8 Mile. They will not work with us. I brought up, you know, putting a bridge in there or something like that on 9 Mile. I suggested it. Or something going down underneath to keep at least one lane of traffic flowing back when we had 4 lanes there. Remember that not too long ago? Okay? And Hilton. They ain't worked with us. They ain't done nothing, and they don't plan on it. They don't have to. All we can do is sit here and take it in our rear end.
Anyone else like to address council on this item before we
I'm sorry, I just live on
begin?
Bennett Street, and
Yeah.
I never got notified. And I'm on the other side of the tracks of what you show there. So if you, I don't know if you guys are going to, what you're going to do tonight, but I'm speaking on behalf of my neighborhood. No one even knew about this. So I'm very fortunate tonight I actually even heard this. So just be considerate of whatever you do of the residents. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Your name?
So, pardon me?
Your name?
Dawn.
Dawn.
So I've lived in that section of Ferndale for a lot of years, and there's a lot of things that have been attempted down there. The State Fairgrounds was going to become a racetrack twice, fought that off with a lot of the help from our neighbors south of there. So I like the idea. Let's talk about the positive things. I like the idea of the traffic being on 8 Mile and not coming up Fair Street anymore. But I have serious concerns over the agreement that you're going to reach and put in writing. Basically, the sound wall, which I think is going to be inadequate at 13 feet high, precast concrete plank for $500,000 isn't going to get it. It's not going to do what you want it to do. It's going to be a placebo and make people feel good. It's not even going to be as high as what's up there on Fair Park. I think it's about 16 feet, if I'm not mistaken, and it sits on a berm. So we're going to end up with less closer to Fair Street, and it's unfortunate. And I do understand the agreement that the railroad has given money to the city to spend at will. So unfortunately, or let's hope it's not, that we could end up with just a chain link fence and some sort of shrubbery. So where's the guarantee that in the event that this goes forward, which I'm certain it's going to, it's done. I understand that the railroad tracks, or the railroad has right of way. But what I want to know is the guarantee that the city's going to give to those neighborhoods that that money is going to be spent 100% blocking Fair Street, not something else, somewhere else. What's the guarantee that that money, of which I think is inadequate for that wall at this time, is going to be spent on that wall, period, and perhaps not shifted somewhere else or in a group of people that are going to analyze it for 6 months and pay them, or hiring an additional person, engineer, to oversee the bidding, the purchasing, the building of it. I'd like to see a budget and how that money's spent if the actual railroad is giving you $500,000 to build that wall. I want to see it properly spent, and I want to know that the deference is given for that to be the sound wall and to be put in the areas that they're identifying, not just speculation. Could you have something?
Well, I'll wait till you're done.
Okay. And also, I spoke last Monday, if I'm not mistaken, posting of no trucks over X amount of axle or ton on residential streets, because now Camden Street is going to be a thoroughfare for the trucks that serve the businesses back there. And right now, as people call it the pork chop, but I call it the island, that directs that traffic back behind, and the trucks can't access the backs of those buildings off of Fair Street. They have to go south. They have to go around that to get to the back of their buildings. Now you're allowing truck traffic to come off Hilton, 8 Mile, to access the back of that. And I think there's going to be bigger truck traffic, and I do understand there's only 3 or 4 buildings, but as it was pointed out last Monday, there's no guarantee that those little buildings aren't going to hold on tight and maybe turn into something with, heavy-duty storage. I don't know. That being said, posting of no trucks over X tonnage or axles down the reservoir, then that leads one to believe, how do you enforce that? What's the city going to do to enforce that for its citizens to make sure that you don't have that on your city streets? Posting a sign is only as good as enforcement, and we know that. So there's 2 things, the involvement of the community and how the money's spent on the wall, the involvement of the community in making sure that they have a guarantee from the city that there's going to be enforcement of the signs that should, or perhaps already are posted. I know that we talked about it possibly. Someone's going to look into that, make sure that they are posted now. And then I would appreciate if there were like a neighborhood feedback. And actually, I thought about last Monday about putting a sign-up sheet in the back, and I think I'm going to do that this time, a sign-up sheet for all the neighborhoods. Put your telephone number, your email address down, and we want to be involved in where that money is spent and how that's spent. So you know, I think it's important for the city to reach out to the people. You will have the money from the train company to do this well, and we want to be involved in how it's built and what it's done. So what are the guarantees? And I know that you're just listening to me, but those are the guarantees that I would hope that the city would guarantee the people that are here, that are going to be having to live with this for a very long time. Any questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, could I respond to a couple points raised by the
Of course.
resident?
Yeah.
The proposed agreement before you this evening does not provide a blank check in a dollar figure to the city. It is to be used for the purposes of a sound wall or mitigation, which could include vegetation as well. And that documentation and audit capability has to be provided back to the railroad. The amount that is been discussed of $500,000 has been tested, and that's actually been modified subsequent to last Monday's public town hall.
Right.
The initial proposal has been increased to approximately $684,000 with an additional $410,000 approximately to be paid by the railroad to the city in the event of potential contingencies as it relates to some of the other properties to the north of their current held properties on Fair Street. So the total amount that is set forth in the agreement is approximately $1,100,000, which has to be used by the city for the purpose of sound and visual mitigation. As to the second point, I have had an opportunity to review Camden Street in particular. There is not signage on that street right now as it relates to trucks accessing that road. That is an area that the city can consider and could perhaps refer to the traffic control officer to evaluate and report back to council as it relates to appropriate signage and potential enforcement mechanisms associated with that issue.
So since she brought it up and since you brought it up, could we talk a little bit? I know last Monday we talked about this $500,000 figure that has been revised now. Can we talk a little bit about the investigation and the research that went into finding that number so that you can help us understand how we're comfortable that that is a number that will meet the requirements that are set forth in this agreement?
Well, very briefly, you know, the city took the data that the railroad presented on that proposed dimension along Fair Street and scrutinized that data and referred it to its consultants and engineers with respect to testing the underlying assumptions as it relates to the construction of a barrier wall.
So our engineers reviewed, that's all I want, that's all I'm asking. Not you, Lloyd, personally, but our city engineers, consultants, reviewed the planning.
And so that CN has resulted in a proposed agreement increasing it by several $100,000.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Unless there's anyone else in the audience, I think I'll open it up now to council for questions, comments on this item.
Well, I wanted to say basically thank you to city staff as well as Councilman Dan Martin and the mayor for being the go-to folks to discuss with CNN, which is a very complicated issue. And I think in the packet for the recommendation, I think the first sentence sums up this scenario, and I'm going to read it verbatim. Officials in each camp recognize that the intermodal facility is a polarizing entity in our community. And our residents and visitors of the city often voice concerns over traffic interruptions, loud sirens, and heavy truck traffic on the city streets. And so this has been a very challenging project in order to figure out what is the best outcome scenario, not only for the residents in the neighborhood impacted by these changes, but also how do we work with CN as they are feeling tremendous business growth and an economy that's getting back to where it was supposed to be. And so I wanted to just sort of set that up as this has been something that's been ongoing in negotiations. But I also have to frame it up, and this is mostly because of the 1995 agreement that says railroads can do not have to follow local ordinances. And so I basically sum up the city's options was either to negotiate or have it happen to us. And so our preferred option was to negotiate and come out with a win-win outcome rather than having it happen to us where we have no winnable outcomes for what we thought were needed for our residents in the neighborhoods. And so I feel like what we have in front of us is the best possible approach going forward, albeit I'm still not, still hasn't been proven how we're going to address the trains on Hilton, and I think in an adequate fashion, but that's not part of this overall agreement, but is something that we've tried to negotiate. And so I just wanted to say, don't trust some of the issues that I've heard throughout the last week or so as we reached out to the residents to hear their issues. Some of them is that we don't trust them, the trains blocking on Hilton, the noise of the stacking cargo bins. Is that what they're called? They're not called cargo bins. What are they called?
Containers?
Containers.
I'm learning. Containers.
Yes. And then this attic, the wall for noise, and then trucks, weight limits on certain streets, and the pork chop slash island issue, which definitely will be worked out, I think, going forward.
There was the lights as well.
And the lights. But the other item I wanted to address that hasn't been brought up yet is the quiet zones, which is everybody's very eager to get. But it's come to my attention that perhaps people have expectations that the quiet zones are going to happen sooner rather than later. And it is my expectation that this is a multi-year study with the federal government. And this could be a 2 to 3 year process in order to get the quiet zones. And so I just wanted to set expectations of the residents and the public in general, and our residents in Pleasant Ridge, who are also eager for this to have happen as well, is that this is a federal government process, and CN has negotiated to serve as our guidance consultants through that federal process and help pay for that process because it is expensive and it is timely, and it's one of those projects that we just don't have staff capacity on our own in order to manage without extra support. And so for me, I feel like this is in a really good direction. There are going to be oversight and management and making sure that the agreements are actually implemented as stated in the agreement. Goes back to the trust issue of the former consent agreement wasn't seen as being followed or managed. And so the city has to make sure that we have oversight and be able to manage this agreement going forward in partnership with the railroad. And so I think we have to put it on the onus ourselves to make sure that we do that, because I think parts of the reason that the consent agreement wasn't as followed was we just had it was 20 years ago and we had changeover of staff, and I think some things fell through the cracks on our end.
Mayor, could I just address that issue in just supplementing what the city manager indicated regarding the proposed quiet zone? As Councilwoman Piana indicated, that is a Federal Railroad Administration program. The proposed agreement provides that CN will reimburse the city for 100% of the costs associated with the necessary consultants and also the anticipated construction improvements to crossings that are going to be necessitated by that consultant's report for submittal to the Federal Railroad Administration. So and it is in the agreement also that to the extent that the approval is not forthcoming, that CN will reimburse, will provide the city $1 million to undertake further efforts to secure that quiet zone designation if it's not able to secure that approval in a short period, in a relatively short period of time.
So, as Councilwoman Piana mentioned, Councilman Martin and I were tasked with the job of starting to sit down and meet with CN representatives, I don't know, 6 months ago or so. We've been at this a while. I'll tell you how we were chosen, because when we first caught wind that the railroad was buying properties on the south end of the city, we met in closed session to determine if there was any legal action that we should be taking to stop this. The two people that were probably the most upset with the railroad and anxious to do something to stop it were Councilman Martin and I. So my colleague, not that everybody wasn't interested, but it was clear in that discussion that we were the most interested. I'll tell you just personally why that was for me, because about 12 years ago, when I was the county commissioner, the railroad had a plan to expand the intermodal, and they were going to take out a bunch of properties to the east, taking out many of our industrial properties. They were going to expand it. They weren't going to offer the city anything for it. And they began to have these public meetings, and we realized very quickly that there was nothing that they wanted from us. There was nothing they were willing to negotiate with us. They were just going to do it. Maybe. They had 4 sites that they were looking at, and Ferndale was one of the 4 sites that they were looking at. I don't know if anybody here remembers that, but I was very involved with that 12 years ago. So as the county commissioner, I joined with Mayor Portert, but Chuck Gettert was our assigned representative to help fight that. We had a whole full-on press to make that stop, and we won. And we won because we were very public and we were very loud, and I don't know why else. You could ask the railroad why else we won, but we won. So my mentality was, we'll gear up and do it again. We're not going to allow Ferndale to simply be overrun by the railroad. But let me tell you some things that I've learned in the negotiations with these folks. First of all, Grand Trunk is not CN. That's the first thing I want to tell you. In my mind, the railroad is the railroad. But I'm here to tell you very honestly that the people that we're talking to today are very different than the folks that work for Grand Trunk and that we negotiated consent agreements with in the 90s, and even that we talked to in the early 2000s about the expansion of the intermodal facility. That doesn't mean that just because they're nice and they're willing to talk with us, I was willing to trust them. But trust me when I say it's a different group of people that we're working with. So that's number one. Number two, as Dan Christ very accurately pointed out, the consent agreements that we had in place, which would have been our device to fight the railroad if we chose, we would take them to court over these consent agreements, may or may not still hold up in court given the change in federal law from 1995. So we could have spent a lot of your money fighting the railroads in court to maybe win, maybe not win, and maybe stop this from happening, maybe.
With no winnable outcome.
And no other benefit to the cities. So what we decided to do is say, okay, these people seem different than they were 12 years ago and 25 years ago. Let's sit down and see if we could reach some kind of mutual agreement with them. And so that's the process that Councilman Martin and I have been involved in. And I'm sorry that he's not here. He's very sick tonight, or he would have been here, because he is supportive of this, by the way. And I will speak for him on that point. So to me, that's the background of where my passion and anger came around this issue. And my whole desire in this process is to make sure that we preserve the neighborhood and enhance the neighborhood if we can, because I used to live on Channing Street. I know that neighborhood, and my entire 100% concern is to make sure that the people that live near the rail yard in that area are not adversely affected by this decision. But frankly, the things that they were willing to give us, and these were the things that we put on the table. Your railroad is loud. We'll offer you $1 million for a quiet zone. I didn't know about, what city did you say might have it in Michigan? Maybe. I thought we were the only city. But I think that is a important thing for our community. But even more important is moving the entrance off of Fair Street over to 8 Mile, which is where it should be in the first place, so that that constant truck traffic is not right on top of the neighborhoods. I also think it's important, and we just touched on it briefly, that they also agree in this agreement not to expand the intermodal yard any further, especially further to the east, where it would take out some very high tax-paying industrial properties, also to the west from where they currently are at now, but not to the east, which was the essence of the fight, if you will, 12 years ago. I thought that those were significant improvements to our neighbors and the folks that live in that neighborhood, enough that I felt like this was worth presenting to folks. I know there's still concerns, and I want to address some of them. The wall, you're right, and I went by, I drove by it a number of times. I actually drove by it on my bike the other day. That wall is hideous. It's right now. That's not their fault, I don't think. I think that's more our fault. Yeah, under this agreement, let me just say, whether it's their fault or our fault, under this agreement, we're going to be responsible for the construction and maintenance of that wall. So we won't have the railroad to point fingers at anymore. If it's not their fault now, it's going to be our fault from now on. And so we're going to maintain that property, and you have our commitment to do that. And if we don't do that, we're here, unlike a railroad that's, you know, in Canada somewhere or nationally, we're here to be held accountable for that. That wall has to be something that those residents can be proud of and take pleasure in living there. The price of the wall, and I'm glad, Dawn, that you brought that up, because I, too, was I was asking the question a week ago, how do we know that this $500,000 figure is adequate? But I knew the answer to the question I asked earlier, which is that we've had the engineers give us their best guess estimate of what that would take. And it increased the amount of the wall, and CN agreed to pay that anyway. So they have met our demands to the extent that we have made demands. That's is all I can share with you. And to the extent that we may or may not have had much legal ability to stop them anyway, I am impressed that the folks that now run the railroad today, they say they want to be good neighbors in Ferndale this time, unlike their predecessors. They say they want to work with us. And more than just saying it, over the last 6 months, they've demonstrated it by agreeing to some fairly significant and expensive demands of the city. So I think Dan mentioned the part about we can't spend that money on anything else but the wall. It'll go into a reserve fund. CN will demand that we spend their money on the wall. That's what they gave it for. But again, if you don't feel like we're spending it, we're here to be held accountable. Dawn, I know you mentioned that it's important to reach out to the people, but that's what we've tried to do. I mean, the town hall last week was not a formal part of the normal process, but we wanted to reach as many residents as we could. It got media attention. I'm glad to see folks here tonight. I want you to know that we take this seriously, and mostly what we take seriously is the quality of life in the neighborhoods around that railroad. I know that I do, and I know my colleagues on council share that as well. You're itching to respond to something I've said, so come on out. That's fine.
I'm not trying to cut anybody
Nope,
off.
that's okay.
It would go a long way for my neighborhoods and my neighbors if they're expanding their business to expand their attempt to block themselves visually and audit, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't see that.
Thank you. And you brought up the point about lights last time, and I know that that's something that is in the current agreement and is required, and so I know, and I see Derek shaking his head, I appreciate that you brought that up. We will, to the best of our ability, enforce that provision, but so I appreciate you bringing that up. But the wall and the vegetation, I think, is going to be the primary method that we use to screen that area, that and moving the trucks away. Yes, sir, now I see that you wanted, yes, please. Yeah.
Ed Schultz, he's actually the guy that ran the ramp for years there. He owns Motor Rail. Now, this is just a curious question, because south of 8 Mile, you have all that land.
I know.
And there would be plenty, there you have a big bridge that runs between it that the guys go, that they use already. Why can't they expand it down into Detroit? You guys need the tax base.
Yep.
I mean,
it's Robert, right?
Robert.
Robert, that's a great question. It was one of my very first questions, which is they're already stacking these containers on the other side of 8 Mile. Why not just buy that property? The simple answer is the Irving Johnson Development people who have bought the State Fair have bought that property. And you know what? They're not interested in selling it to the railroad. The railroad owns this property already. They don't own that. They're leasing, my understanding is they're leasing that right now to stack containers in the interim. But the people who are going to develop the State Fair property are not interested in making that a permanent solution.
Okay, then really quick,
Yep.
Ed Schultz ran that for 50 years. Okay,
I don't know Ed Schultz.
He said to be a witness.
Yeah.
I don't know. I only been there for 4. But it was a union, development, union ran company, but they didn't do anything at night. He told me this 2 weeks ago that. They said they ran it, they didn't have all the, I hear them clanging in, the containers in the well all night long.
Yep.
Weekends, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
And maybe this needs to be contracted out. Maybe, seriously.
You bring up a fair point. One of the things that I've been educated on in these negotiations is that railroads are 24/7 operations. They don't work 8 to 5. Our ability to limit those hours is, well, 0. We don't have the ability to direct the hours of the railroad. I hear what you're saying, sir.
But that's the reason why they actually have the overflow is because they can't handle what they have.
Okay.
Maybe it's a coordination thing. Which is why
I would, one other point I wanted to make just broadly, and Dennis, I think you made this, you'd say, why can't we just get them out? The reality is that Ferndale and the rail yard have a long history, much of it not pleasant, but there's no divorcing Ferndale from the rail yard. So the question is, how do we manage this relationship and the way they operate in a way that has the least amount of impact on the people that live the closest to it, like I said, of which I used to be one. For me, after many months of negotiations with folks, I do believe that this is an agreement that, because it mitigates the sound, because it moves the entrance away from the streets, because it guarantees that the footprint of the rail yard will not grow, and puts us in charge of the wall and the vegetation and making it look like something we can be proud of in Ferndale, I support this this agreement, and I will say, because I feel like I was a hard person to impress, but I appreciate the true partnership that we ended up having over many, many months. They are here in the audience, by the way, if anyone has any further final questions or comments to the folks from CN, they are here. They've been to all of our meetings. They have made themselves available, and they have been reasonable people to work with. So moving forward, if this passes tonight, though, I want you to know, council will still be here to hold us responsible for the things in here. Oh, I know the last thing I wanted to say, and then I'm sorry, then I'll shut up, is on the issue of signs. I think, because I agree that those streets could and should probably be posted as no truck routes and with the limitations clearly marked and our enforcement folks on that. So Derek, or is that a DPW issue, April? It's a police issue in terms of enforcing it. It's DPW in terms of putting the signs up, right, in terms of traffic control.
Yep.
But I see them all nodding their heads, so I'm going to speak on their behalf and say, I agree. I think that's a good idea to remind people, but you're right. Signs are only as good as the people that read them, and enforcement would need to be part of that, and we'll hold them accountable to do that. Any other discussions? And I guess that would be you.
Actually, you've covered any questions or comments that well, not really comments, but questions that I had and what clarifications. So I'll save my comments to just before the vote.
We're getting close to that, actually, so it might be time for that.
Do you want to ask
what?
Do you want to ask whether the railroad has?
Oh, that's a great point. Like I said, the representatives of CN are here this evening. You came all this way. Do you have any final just points or comments or that you would like to share on this item?
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Patrick Waldron with CN. I'm here with two of my colleagues, Mike Matucci and Gordon Graham. And we are the three that have been working with the city throughout this process. And tonight, Only to close out your comments, Mayor, we thank you for working with us on this arrangement. We think it's a win-win. We think it brings benefits to the city, and we're very grateful for the work the city staff has put in, as well as yourself. Thank you.
I see you wanting to raise your hand, so if you'd like a final comment, this would be the time, because. Right. Oh. Yeah. No, I think that was a good idea. I didn't mean to ignore that, and I think Derek might have some ideas about it.
Yeah, and we hadn't contemplated a committee, and that would certainly be up to council and the residents. The intent is, and the discussion.
Oh, repeat her question, because she wasn't on mic, so folks at home maybe didn't hear that.
And I can repeat her. She asked about the creation of a citizens committee for consideration of the wall, review of the proposed designs. A separate committee is not something we had discussed, but what we have proposed is open public meetings with public comment in front of the Planning Commission, which is a board of 9 residents to review potential design considerations for the wall. We would propose conceptual designs, and the Planning Commission and the public could comment at those meetings, with the Planning Commission actually making the final decision. They are the board that is charged with that kind of technical assistance to the city, and those would be fully open meetings. If there's something additional we wanted to do, certainly we're open to consideration, but that is the process we've outlined right now.
And is it possible, if residents were interested and they wanted to make sure they didn't miss that opportunity, to email the city and ask to be included in a notification of that meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We do that all the time. Anybody who wants to, and I have cards with me, and anybody who wants to be put on a list, we can generate a mailing list to make sure that they're made, personal mailers are sent out for any time that item appears on an agenda or for discussion. We can even email them the concepts and other considerations ahead of time, so they're prepared to have those conversations at the meeting.
I have a question for clarification. So we're going to email residents who request to receive an email for the Planning Commission meeting for the public input session for the wall, or are we actually going to mail residents around there telling them about the public meeting so that they can come? Does that make sense? It's a two different.
It does.
We can do either and or both. We can continue to mail the group that was mailed for the public meeting last Wednesday, which is a rather sizable mailing list, and then anybody additional from anywhere in the city, east or west of the tracks, that wish to be notified, we can supplement that list and include them on those mailings as well.
And how should they contact the city?
I can have my card if they're here tonight, or if they want to contact.
But folks listening at home,
the Community and Economic Development Department, our number is 248-546-2366. Or they can email us at any of the email addresses available on the website.
Actually, Joe just created an email. railroad@ferndalemi.gov.
There you go.
Again, that's railroad@ferndalemi.gov.
That's responsive.
Now, that is responsive. He literally just did that. Railroad@ferndalemi.gov. So if you'd like further information, or to, more specifically, to be on the notification of when the potential wall and other improvements would be discussed, send an email to that address, to that email, and we'll make sure to notify you.
Clarification.
Yes.
If the train is stuck at the crossings, don't email that address hoping that you can get the train to move.
Very good.
Fair point. And on that, was there any other comments that anyone wanted to make before we vote?
I got a question for the railroad.
All right.
Why can't they separate the cars when they're blocking multiple intersections? Why not open it up, let the traffic flow, because from Ferndale to Royal Oak, they blocked every intersection for a lot of years at one time. Now, why can't they open up, just open it up?
The operations into the rail yard here in Ferndale, the trains will back up and then push back into the yard. As they do that process, sometimes they will stop to throw a switch. In the middle of that process, if you were to cut the train, it would make the whole thing last 2, 3, 4 times as long. So the most efficient way is to keep the train together and keep the train moving. And we have heard the concerns of block crossings here in Ferndale. It's a difficult position with two major streets right outside any railroad terminal. We have heard those concerns. We've looked at the operation. We've made some adjustments, and we think we've seen some remarkable improvement, and we will keep that up. And that's our commitment to the city of Ferndale.
Thank you.
To the chair, I have
Yeah.
one more question, and it's more of a directive to city staff, not put in the actual agreement. I request that we create some sort of webpage that talks about the timing of these items that need to be implemented. So the removal of the pork chop, when is that going to happen? What's the steps to make that happen? When do we expect the wall to be planned or at least erected? So just what is the high-level timing of these things that we can give feedback and a railroad webpage maybe about where we can help showcase that we're actually holding ourselves accountable and we're following through on the consent agreement? That would be very helpful for the public as well as myself on some of the things that we are requested to do, and outline the quiet zone process. Man, I have no idea what that entails. So.
Yep, good idea. All right. If there's no further questions or comments, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
We haven't made a motion yet.
Oh, we haven't. I'm sorry. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the mitigation agreement between City of Ferndale and Grand Trunk Western Railroad Company.
I support.
So moved by Polika and supported by Piana. Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
I want to.
Oh, this is where
This
you
is
want
where
to
I
make
would like to
your
make my
comments.
comments, because I don't have questions or.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yep.
So when I bought my home back in 2002, the selling agent gave me the wrong set of keys. So as I'm sitting on my front porch, waiting for her to come back with the right keys, I hear 2 trains go by in 30 minutes, and I thought to myself, what have I gotten myself into? I'm less than 1,000 feet from the Hilton Road crossing on East Saratoga. So folks around that area get to hear the horns from trains at 3 crossings. And the traffic over the past 10 years has significantly increased. So when we had the opportunity to meet with CN representatives last year to discuss the proposed expansion, the very first thing out of my mouth was, I'd like CN to implement quiet crossings in Ferndale. Now, I thought they were called quiet crossings. I've since then come to know them as quiet zones. Now, that may sound a little bit of self-serving, but I knew that that change would also help thousands of residents within the Ferndale area. When CN presented initial plans to expand their facility and increase the volume of traffic on Fair Street, because originally their plans were to buy up those properties on Fair Street and increase the entrance there on Chesterfield to allow for more truck traffic. I expressed my apprehension and concerns for supporting such a change and inquired to the possibility of moving their main entrance to 8 Mile, which surprisingly they originally wanted, but they were afraid to request that of the city because they didn't think the city would support that. This, I think, is a better move as it eliminates a lot of truck traffic out of the residential area and creates an improved quality of life for residents along Fair Street. Because if that changed, if we did nothing, they would have a lot more truck traffic on Fair Street without moving it to 8 Mile. Because let's face it, they're going to be increasing business there whether we like it or not. The third request I was hoping for CN was to stop stacking and unstacking shipping containers from midnight to 6 a.m. But they informed me that they are a 24-hour facility and they have no control over when trains come into their facility. However, they greatly reduced the sound of the crane backup signal, which used to pierce the night at 3 a.m. And after CN said that they would support the first 2 items, I really didn't want to push number 3 and lose everything. And I think a lot of people will agree that the nighttime sound coming from the yard has decreased in the last year. It used to be a lot more activity that used to go on there. I know, I used to hear, even from where I'm at, live, I used to hear containers crashing against each other at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. what many people don't realize is that CN did not have to work with the city to make this agreement. CN wanted to work with the city to come up with a very generous compromise and to show that they wanted to be good neighbors to our community. CN could have easily done everything they wanted to do without ever having this meeting happen or without any approval from the city. The laws regarding expansion for rail companies has not changed since they were created in the 1800s. Basically, railroad companies have the right to eminent domain when they see fit to expand, and local state governments have absolutely no say in the matter. The very fact that CN is here to negotiate a contract with the city should tell people, the people of Ferndale, that CN does want to be good neighbors and partners. I also think it speaks volume that they are willing to agree in writing that they will adhere to several of our requests and will not expand their facility any further than this contract states, without the future approval and agreement of the city of Ferndale. If someone wants to come forward with a better agreement than this, I'm willing to listen. But I think this ultimately is a win-win for the city and CN.
Why can't they go south? If they can have a domain, why can't they just take over land down there? Why can't they go to Detroit? It's the same thing. They have a lot of land down there.
We've had that conversation, and the issue is, well, but we could say nothing and get nothing, and they still won't move down there.
Agree to this, but just put it on the table that domain goes south, and they can make the 8-mile bridge wider. They can put another track over there. You can put 2 or 3 tracks. You know that, and on top of that, they can actually expand another road for the truck traffic. That's all.
I can't top what you said there, Councilman. Any other last comments? Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmembers Polika?
Yes.
Piano? Yes. And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Moving on to our agenda item B would be the consideration of the DDA Board of Directors request to
7A1.
Oh, yes, that's right. We added, yep, thank you very much. We added a 7A1 in the event that that were to pass, and that would be the consideration of an approval of a resolution to schedule, thank you, a public hearing regarding the vacation of a portion of Chesterfield Avenue and Fern Street, and that is necessary to affect this plan. And Dan, do you want to speak to that?
Well, thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Very briefly, what the proposed resolution would do would be to schedule a public hearing in at least 4 weeks, which, given council's agenda, would be September 14th, to have a public hearing regarding the vacation of a portion of Fern Street and Chesterfield Avenue, which are proposed to be vacated, consistent with the mitigation agreement you've just approved. So it also, the proposed resolution provides a direction to the city to provide the notice required under the charter and to have that notice, along with the resolution, published in a paper of general circulation in the city.
All right. Other questions of council?
Yes. In this motion, do we have to say what date it's going to be held on, or just that we're going to hold one?
Well, that it's going to be at least 4 weeks from today's date, from the resolution. That would actually fall, 4 weeks would fall, I believe, on
Should we just say September?
September 14th, I think.
Yeah, whatever. I thought you said 4 weeks.
Yep, September 14th.
Oh, September 14th.
At a regularly scheduled council meeting. All right. So a motion would be in order.
I move to approve a public hearing for, at the September 14th regular meeting of City Council to, to approve a resolution to schedule public hearing regarding vacation of portion of Chesterfield and Fern Street. Thank you.
Support.
All right. Moved by Piana, supported by Polika. Any other discussion on that item of council or of the public? Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmembers Piana?
Yes.
Polka?
Yes.
And Mayor Holder?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Moving on now to regular agenda item B, which is the consideration of a DDA Board of Directors request to review proposed liquor licenses in the DDA district. Now, I know that, the interim director of the DDA is here, Derek is here. This has been before the DDA, so who wants to introduce this item?
I guess I'll start, since I'm probably a part responsible for this. There's been a lot of conversation over the previous years, and I'm currently sit as one of the members of the Liquor Review Committee, along with a lot of staff, Cindy, some city council members. And one of the discussions that's taken place at all of those meetings in relation to especially issuance of licenses in the downtown is the conversation of support of both surrounding residents and the business community within the downtown, and whether or not they've been given ample opportunity to voice their concerns regarding the issuance of liquor licenses. I know that's been a conversation that council's had here on several occasions when liquor licenses have come before you. It's a conversation we've had as part of the Liquor Review Committee. So one of the things that was discussed and considered by the DDA Board of Directors, and I'll let Cindy talk about the specifics, was the opportunity to adjust the policy and ordinances of the city to include the DDA Board of Directors in that review process. Not giving them approval authority over a license that still rests squarely with City Council at their discretion. But in response to those questions regarding does the business community and what is the opinion of the business community in relationship to issuance of additional DDA licenses or licenses within the downtown, should they review the applications at the same time as the review committee and make a recommendation to City Council whether they support the issuance of that license or not. We discussed it internally as to what that process was look like. The DDA chair and the director took that item to the DDA board. They consider it, and then made a motion asking City Council to consider including them as a recommending authority prior to making a decision on whether to issue a license or not. What you have in front of you is the result of that process. It's a potential ordinance amendment that would include the DDA Board of Directors as a recommending authority only prior to consideration of a liquor license by council. That would include them in the loop and give them an opportunity to review the application, vet the information similar to the review committee, make a consideration, make a motion, and then make that recommendation to council. So we thought that was an appropriate way to include them in the loop and give them the ability to opine formally and even give the applicants the opportunity to speak in front of that board prior to council making a decision. So that's the history of the process. I don't know, Cindy, if you have anything to add.
No, I think Derek just about covered it. I think what the board wants to do is just work with council a little bit more, and this request kind of offers an additional level of review and perspective to kind of enhance the current city policy. So.
Good. Thank you. So, are there questions of council?
Quick clarifications. Will the DDA be making a formal recommendation, or will their recommendation be part of the committee that currently reviews the applicants?
The way it's structured, and I'd let Dan opine if I'm incorrect, it's separate from.
Yeah, as proposed, they'll have an opportunity. They will, provided the application, have an opportunity to prepare a report and recommendation to council. And there's some time provisions that are proposed in both the amendment to the ordinance as well as the liquor license review policy, which is before you this evening, which would afford the DDA an opportunity. And that, and just one point of clarification, this would apply both in the context of a new license application as well as a transfer application within the DDA.
Okay. So they actually could at times have the choice not to submit a recommendation to council.
That's right, because that's a separate board. So this amendment isn't telling the DDA what to do. Mm-hmm. It's affording them an opportunity to do what has been expressed as an intent of what they want to do, but it isn't dictating to them. It's giving them an opportunity to weigh in.
Okay.
And then council will make its decision and factor in and listen or consider the criteria that's already established in the criteria.
Okay.
So if I may have a follow-up question to that?
Sure.
If I may. So the DDA can choose not to actually provide a recommendation for a liquor license if they decide for some reason that they don't want to.
Yes, it's a separate it's a separately
So they could
created.
pick a business that they may not want to provide a
They
recommendation
will
for.
have been afforded an opportunity to weigh in and provide a report and recommendation to council on a new or transferred application.
Right, but it's not mandatory.
That's right. This elected body won't be telling that other separate created entity what it has to do. And
I guess my point is that the DDA may choose not to provide a review or provide a recommendation for a business coming in. It is not mandatory via this ordinance that they have to review every license coming through the pipeline.
it's not provided in this draft.
So they could pick winners and losers if they wanted to. That's my point. They could pick people that they would, an applicant, that they could choose not to actually provide a recommendation on for some reason. I'm just saying.
Well,
it's a possibility. I'm not sure.
But
that
am I
they-
here, but.
I
Does
think
that
I
make
understand
sense?
what you're saying.
Clarification.
I guess I'll be blunt. Big surprise. So a business could come to the table and say they want a liquor license, and the DDA really doesn't want this business in here, not make a recommendation. We agree to approve it, and then the DDA gets upset with us because that we approved a business that they really didn't want, but they didn't give us a chance to. They're not forced to make a recommendation. They're not.
Well, I know, but.
That's not the intent here. I know. I'm
Right.
just pointing out an opportunity that could.
No, but
realized.
to clarify that, if I hear you right, Dan, we can't demand
That's right.
that the DDA board, a separate legal governing body, make,
Right. Created by council, but separate.
created, but now governed
That's right,
by its own
separately.
board and separate. We can't, it's not that the DDA asked for the ability to do some and not do some. We can't force them to do that. But I think the point is, the DDA board, if I'm not mistaken, has discussed this and passed this resolution and this recommendation to council, correct?
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
they want to do that to be able to assist council in making decisions. I don't think they have any desire to pick and choose what they want to talk about, what they don't want to talk about.
Right. I just wanted to
Right.
point out
That
there's.
we can't
yes,
make them, and.
We can't make them, but
Right.
the expectation, and I know the DDA is very hardworking and wants to work with us, and we want to work with them. I'm just pointing out a possibility down the road. My other question is, if I may, are you done? Do you have any questions?
No, I do have one other part. Just for clarification, this won't delay the process at all. No, okay.
Not
I don't believe so. I mean, until it's implemented, it'll be, not by any substantive measure, it won't delay the process. No.
Okay, we wouldn't be waiting 2 weeks for the DDA to then meet so they can give us the approval, and therefore the applicant would have to then be delayed.
We will, but it'll be part of the timeline that'll be established up front, that everybody will understand is a step in the process.
Okay.
Yeah, the two review processes, we would do them concurrently, the Liquor Review Committee and the DDA. It has the potential to add a short amount of time, again, not substantive, I don't think. The Liquor Review Committee doesn't meet on a regular basis. If we receive an application, the intent is to forward that directly to the DDA for their next agenda, and then follow our normal process, which is to schedule the Liquor Review Committee. After both boards would hear, we would forward it to council.
And through the chair,
Yes.
the ordinance proposes that should the DDA wish to make a recommendation and report to council, it has to do that 15 days prior to the council having the matter on its agenda. So there should be sufficient lead time through the ordinance for the DDA, if it wishes to weigh in, to have its hearing or have its meeting.
Well, I really appreciate the point of view from the DDA board, and I'm appreciative of this approach. I mean, I am cautioned on two things. One, the city values streamlining, and though by my guesstimates, this adds at least a month on to the process in some cases where alignment of meetings may not align due for whatever reason, quorum or whatever, but it won't be consistent. And then I was wondering if there was a sunset on this. At what point do we think, what are we looking for in the long term in terms of solving some of these challenges with parking? And is this a permanent solution to a short-term problem? Does that make sense? Is this permanent thing, or do we need to reassess a year from now and saying, hey, is this working? Is this
Through the chair, I think the parking component was not part of this proposed draft. This only applied to the consideration of a new license or transfer. I think my understanding was the parking aspect is still being studied and is not within either the amendment or the council resolution regarding license reviews.
Right. All right. And then my final comment and question, and it comes back to the first sentence of the summary that says, due to the continued real and perceived issues associated with peak hour parking and the availability capacity of the parking system, really that's the statement I wanted to build off of, is that we are still looking for information about how to solve these challenges, right? And this review is all about saying, hey, can we handle this capacity or not of this new business? So the DDA needs to work with the city on coming up with data to help prove the real and or perceived. And I think we're missing that information right now to help everybody make a qualified decision. We've put some things in place in order to sort of address that with the retail specialist, with the master plan update, and the parking analysis as well. But, you know, for us just to provide, you know, go ahead with this liquor license review recommendation without actually looking at the data in order to address the real or perceived issues. And I say this is because I've asked for 2 years now almost information from the DDA to guide future policy discussions. And I was hoping that we could at least put this on the table moving forward with the DDA and work to find solutions to answer these questions. And just to give a couple examples that I pulled from the 2013 market analysis report from the 350 businesses that the DDA 2013 market analysis report. And it says that we have 350 businesses in our downtown with 24% shopping retail and 25% dining and entertainment. And my question is, as it relates to collecting the data to address the real and perceived issues related to peak hour parking, is what some of these changes are to the market analysis. And so one question I have is, what is the total square footage of retail, commercial, restaurant space in our downtown? What is the percentage of square footage dedicated to restaurant compared to retail? Since 2013, what is the percent of increase in dining retail mix? So I've posed these questions in multiple emails and have talked to some DDA board members. I really want to make sure that these questions are front and center and that we can try to answer them.
Absolutely, and I started working on some of that. I've been analyzing the data. Of course, it's not as easy.
I understand.
Getting the square footage. I took the market analysis property information, merged that with our current database, sorted out the duplicates. Of course, some of the buildings are just classified as mixed use, so they have multiple different types of tenants in it. So,
well, that's what I wanted to hear, is that you're working on it.
Absolutely. I can tell you that overall we have about 1.1 million square feet of space in the downtown. About 197,000 is retail. That doesn't include those multi-space businesses. 217,000 is restaurant, with about 154,844 square feet being liquor license establishments, and the other 62,000 being non-liquor license establishments. We had about 6% of the retail change over to restaurant from the 2013 market analysis between then and now. So it's not as big. The bigger jump was prior to that.
Okay.
So I started doing some of that. We're still working on getting totally accurate square footage information so we can back into it. Some things in the market analysis seem to even be miscategorized. Easy Like Sunday was classified as retail, which is not retail. So going back and redoing that as well. So
I really appreciate that, because I think data was only going to help the city council and the city and the DDA board of directors really drill down to solving the real and perceived parking issues. So I appreciate this.
I will just say that I am very supportive of this. I appreciate the DDA board's debate of it, willingness to participate in this. I'm very supportive for a couple of reasons. Number one, there's been a lot of debate over the last, since I've been mayor and since before then, and maybe, about how many is enough, how you know, what is the right number and type of liquor licenses in our downtown. It's an important question, and every time we lose another retail business to another liquor establishment, it just becomes that much more important of a question. And so to me, although I agree that streamlining our processes is normally the priority, if it takes a little while longer to make sure that everybody that needs to weighs in, to make sure that we're getting that conversation right, I'm very supportive of that. The DDA is the primary voice of our downtown business establishments. And so as we add liquor licenses there, this is obviously something that's very important to them. They should be at the table weighing in on this. They want to be in on the table weighing on this, and I couldn't be happier that they are. And finally, the city and the DDA have sometimes talked. Despite our attempts to work well together, we sometimes talk past each other. So this, in my opinion, will help us, force us in some ways, to try to get on the same page and to work better together to reach important decisions on important issues like this in a way that I think will only improve the relationship between the city and the DDA, and I don't want to say improve the relationship, but help us work more seamlessly together. So I'm very supportive of this, and I appreciate the DDA's board, and Cindy, you can let them know that willingness to be part of this process and their work in passing this resolution in the first place. And by the way, maybe that's my final point, which is I love the process of this, which is your board takes up something, has a thoughtful debate on it, brings it to our council, we have a thoughtful debate on it. This is the model, I think, going forward for how we can just improve the communications between our two organizations. So thank you.
And my interest is to make sure we're improving the data to help us inform the debate.
I understand that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then my final comment, and it just faded away from my brain. I can't remember. It will come back to me in a minute. So go ahead.
All right. Is there any other? Is anyone from the public want to just have weigh in on this item? All right. Any other questions or comments of council? Just in time.
Yes. I wanted to make a point of clarification that the DDA director was provided comment on the liquor license applications. Am I correct? So there was always a DDA sort of.
The executive director?
Yeah.
The DDA is still on the city's license review committee.
Right.
On the license review committee,
the
yes.
license review committee. So this is an expansion of that, and I agree with you. This is really definitely going to improve communications and understanding and understanding mutual interests, and so I think that's important.
All right. Marty, would you call the roll, please?
You have to make a motion.
Oh, again, I did
move
that.
to
Yeah.
approve ordinance number 1165, amending Chapter 3 alcoholic beverages, Article 2, Section 317 of the Ferndale Code of Ordinances, and adopt resolution regarding approval of new and transfer of on-premise licenses, to authorize the DDA Board of Directors to review liquor license applications in the downtown, and to make a recommendation prior to consideration of the proposed liquor license by City Council.
Support.
All right. Moved by Piana and supported by Polika. Any final discussion by anybody? All right. Marty, would you call the roll?
Council members Piana,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
and Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Thank you. Regular agenda. Item C is the consideration of a request for city cable studio update. And well, you were the chief innovation officer, but as of an hour and a half ago, you're the acting city man. You're the assistant city manager. So, Joe,
Thank you.
You haven't changed Joe, right?
No,
Okay.
Joseph now.
Joseph. Now it's Joseph. That is more authoritative. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to, before I introduce item 7C, I'd like to preface request that council remove 7D, cable equipment purchase for FPS. We are still supportive of the request, but we would like to bring this back on the 24th
with a brief agreement that just summarizes how the equipment would be used by the Ferndale schools.
Okay. So when we get to D, we'll move to table.
Just-
Yeah.
just
All right,
preface.
thanks.
Yep. So 7C, this is an item that will involve rehabilitating the city's existing cable studio space and a lot of the equipment that impacts the way our residents experience city council meetings. I will, before I go into that, I will introduce just how this project will be funded. This is a project funded through PEG fees, and those fees are provided by city cable providers. So AT&T, Comcast, and WOW, and percentage of their annual fees, percentage of annual gross revenues are sent to the city in form of checks for PEG fees and for franchise fees. In return for allowing them to provide services to our residents and utilize our public right-of-way to provide that service, they owe us a percentage of their gross revenues annually. So the revenues that the city receives in the form of PEG fees are for capital improvements for the city's cable department. So that being said, this project will focus on a few things, and the first one, the majority of the costs will be focused on updating some significantly legacy equipment for our film editing and film production. So that's called the NewTek TriCaster. That represents over 75% of the cost of this project. That's going to consolidate about three or four pieces of equipment into one piece of equipment. That new piece of equipment will be installed and mounted in the rack professionally. Other significant notable items would be repairing and replacing some of the microphones at City Council, replacing some of the data feedback equipment.
Speaking of which.
Replacing some of the equipment that's been causing feedback. I know that a lot of residents in Council have noticed over the last several months some audio problems with our audio-video equipment, and we've heard that there's some feedback issues that Council that people do receive. So this project will be rehabilitating a lot of this work that has not been attended to over the past several years.
Excellent.
Does Council have any questions about the project?
Any questions or comments on this item?
I have one. How much do we get a year in PEG fees?
It depends on the gross revenues that the cable companies receive, but on average, over the past several years, it's between $60,000 and $70,000 annually.
Significant.
I am excited about this one as well. It reminds me a little bit of the district court. There's nothing I like better than upgrading some really outdated stuff and doing it on someone else's dime. So the fact that we will be able to significantly upgrade the experience that people have watching council and other community programs with non-taxpayer dollars is very exciting to me. On that point, though, is it just council meetings, or what will this particular equipment give us the ability to expand some of the programming? I know we've talked about that, or is that going to require?
Ultimately, it enables us to. This equipment, the reason why we're choosing this equipment is because should we expand any of the cable productions into remote filming for special events, this is a piece of equipment that could take that studio on the road. We cannot do that right now. The equipment that we have is older and it's legacy equipment. It's stationary. This is equipment that can be portable and put into a carrying case and lob it into a van. And so should we staff the cable department to be able to do that, then yes. Yep.
Great. Other comments or questions?
I think it's a great investment, long overdue. And I think people will be really happy that we have better audio, because apparently I talk really low and not really close to the microphone. So new microphones would be helpful.
If it only included new seats, but we'll save that for another day. All right. A motion would be in order.
Actually, I do have one other question.
Yes.
A while back, we approved some other cable equipment. How is this different than what we approved?
Yes, so I apologize. I wanted to also provide kind of a general outline of general capital improvement requests that we have made and will be making for the cable department now that we are incorporated into the technology capital improvement plan. Last year, council, I believe it was in April of 2014, approved of an upgrade of the Latronics machine, and that machine helps us manage more or less programming on the cable station. We can actually schedule council productions. We can incorporate items like the Ferndale Symphony into the WFRN programming. So that's what that equipment does. That is specific to just that function. This is specific to film editing and film production of council meetings and other mobile cable meetings. Another important piece that we have budgeted for this year to replace the agenda tracker. Right now, the agenda tracker we use is Granicus, and it does provide residents with the opportunity to experience council meetings online, streaming, and to get that agenda online. However, it is older, and it did predate mobile technology, so it cannot be people who want to watch on tablets or smartphones or any other mobile devices or responsive devices cannot do so right now because this can't produce video in that format. We will be updating that this year too. And then the other major piece would be updating the cameras. Right now we're still broadcasting on standard definition. Once we continue these improvements, we could see all of your blemishes in high def.
Oh, I don't look good in high def.
But you could conceivably put a filter on that actually softens the look as well.
We certainly could.
Yes.
So, yeah, council can expect us to bring different various cable capital requests that you might not have heard in the past, and that is important for us to delineate the different types of equipment that the public might be seeing as requests for investment.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, a motion would be in order.
I move to approve of the purchase and installation of the new TriCaster and the rehabilitation of the cable studio and council chambers for a total cost of $26,457 to be drawn from the appropriate account.
Oh, support.
Is there an issue with the motion?
Nope, I was on the wrong
City
one.
manager?
Nope,
No?
you're good,
Oh,
you're good.
Okay, very good. Final discussion on this item. Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmembers Fiona,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
and Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Thank you, Joe. Joseph. Item D, as Joe just mentioned, we will entertain a motion to table until the next meeting so that an agreement can be drawn up more specifically around that item.
I make a motion to table 7D, cable equipment purchase for FPS until the next council meeting.
I support.
Moved by Polika, supported by Piana. Any discussion? Marnie?
Councilmembers Polika,
Yes.
Fiona.
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. Finally, moving on to regular agenda item E, which is the consideration of a medical marijuana recommendation. And Dan, you're going to introduce that item?
I would be happy to, Your Honor.
Be great.
Before you this evening is a proposed resolution. It contemplates the opening of a public hearing to have this resolution, which would, the resolution before you would propose to modify the special land use approval for applicants who have received special land use approval but who have not yet commenced operation on the construction project with respect to their proposed medical marijuana facility. And additionally, it also would provide that the city administration suspend the processing of any new medical marijuana applications until a time period 6 months after one of the 3 previously approved medical marijuana applications has actually opened, or until such time as one of the special land use approvals for one of those approved medical marijuana facilities actually expires. And just to provide a little bit of background, the city administration has been concerned, and the police department as well, with the process of certain applicants having come to both the Planning Commission and City Council with respect to their plans for a medical marijuana facility. And the city has encouraged those submittals, but is anxiously awaiting one of the approved applications to actually open. And there is a time component associated with the review and processing of those applications. And the police department in particular has expressed concern with respect to both capacity and burdens associated with the enforcement and oversight associated with those medical marijuana facilities. And absent one of the facilities opening, it's hard to gauge quantitatively and with precision what the actual impact of one of the medical marijuana facilities will be once it's open. So thus, the resolution is presented before you. One of the three applicants has apparently already pulled a building permit and started commencement of work regarding the medical marijuana facility. It's my understanding that notice was provided to the two other applicants who've received special land use approval but who have not yet commenced any construction with respect to their plan of operation. And so the resolution, if approved, would impact those two only to the extent that it would shorten the duration of their special land use approval to complete their plan of operation. If you have any questions, I'd certainly be happy to answer them. Mayor, I would encourage you that after any questions are asked, that you open for public comment a public hearing.
Tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Should we do that first?
Well, you can ask questions if you have questions, or you can open the public hearing.
We'll start with that. If there are questions of fact of council, let's do those. Then we'll open a public hearing on this matter, and then we'll close that and deliberate on this issue.
My question requires clarification. Will this change still allow individuals or businesses to submit an application and allow them to be in a queue waiting for their application to be processed? Or are we eliminating any businesses from submitting an application until one of these three fall off the 18-month time period?
Through the chair.
Yes.
Applications can be submitted, but they will be held in abeyance pending one of the events occurring, either one of the previously approved applications and facilities opening for a period of 6 months, or one of the previously approved applications, special land use approvals, expiring because of non-action. So they will be received by the city, dated, complete applications received by the city, but they will not be processed until the occurrence of one of those two criteria happens.
Okay. Other questions? If not, I'm sorry.
I have more comments, but it can wait
Yeah,
after the
all right.
public hearing.
So if not, I will open a public hearing for anyone from the public that would like to address council on this item. Good evening, sir.
My name is Seth Tompkins. I represent a series of individuals who are investing on purchasing a piece of property, and the closing is scheduled for tomorrow. And we've been in contact with several municipalities prior to deciding to purchase this piece of property and trying to find out which community would be the best in order for this group to invest in order to work with the community, work with the police department, work with the city officials, and being transparent on what they were doing in order to be compliant with Michigan's medical marijuana law. And if I had not called this morning and spoken to Barb, because we were putting together the application today because the closing is tomorrow, I would not even known that there was going to be a change potentially to this ordinance. So I know that there's two sections of this ordinance. One of them is reducing the time period in which someone who is permitted has the ability to actually begin the use of that permit, otherwise they would lose it. And I can understand the municipality's concern about having a permit floating out there on something like this. It's brand new. There are not a lot of cities that have implemented stuff like this. I mean, and I think that Ferndale is right to have done it. The only reason we didn't go into the other municipalities is because we didn't want to deal with a lawsuit in light of what's it called, the Verbeek decision versus Wyoming, where the Supreme Court has basically said that municipalities cannot prohibit someone from participating in something that is legal under the Medical Marijuana Act. Okay, so having someone use their permit is important. You need to be able to actually see what's going on. However, the second part of it is what really concerns me, because my clients are about to invest hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars into a piece of property. Half of it they already have a use for. The other half, this is what they were planning on doing with it. And now they have potential tenants lined up. We were ready to go. And so now you have a process where you really do have a moratorium. I mean, you can say that we could submit an application, but unless the application is processed, there's no, I mean, the actual amendment to the resolution is no action will be taken on new applications. So, yeah, it sits in an inbox and it doesn't do anything. There's no work done on it. It is, in effect, a moratorium on processing these applications, and it is an extended period of time, because if the present applicants wait the full 18 months to start building, or to get open, and then we have to wait another 6 months after that, we're talking into 2017 potentially before another application will be processed by the city. And I've seen the application. It's extensive. There's a long question and answer period that an applicant has to go through. And I think that because of that, because there is scrutiny in the application process, that the city can readily see people who are not going to be qualified, in the city's opinion, to be granted this permit, and those people who would be qualified. And to deny those people that would otherwise be qualified, who have all, I mean, it's too late. They can't back out of the purchase of this property. As far as I'm concerned, we did all of our due diligence. There was no way for anyone to know that the city was going to change its mind and not process an application the day before they close on a piece of property. But they're almost going to be, they're going to be $1 million into a project that now half of their project is thrown up in the air, and that's a lot of money. So I agree. I do a lot of liquor licensing work, and that's why I get clients that call me about this, because it's highly regulated. It's very regulated, just like liquor control. We have to deal with municipalities just like liquor control. We have to deal with special land use in a lot of cities just like liquor control. So I've seen the ordinance in the city. It is a very strict ordinance. I mean, you can't build these places around a residential area. You can't build them around a school. You can't build them around a daycare facility. You can't build one with a certain amount of feet within another one. So there's a density issue there, or a concentration issue there that's been taken into consideration. And I've seen the application itself, and it's very long, and it asks for a lot of personal information. It asks for a lot of personal financial information. I think that the city has the appropriate tools to vet people who are asking for this permit. So I'm asking that the city consider that there are individuals out there that have looked at the city of Ferndale and said, we're going to invest in this city because this is the city that said we want to work with you in order to get your business going, to get this property used for a legal purpose. And now I know these guys, if this passes, they're in a lot of trouble. They're going to owe a lot of money to a bank, and they were planning on having tenants, because we don't have any problem. I don't think we're going to have any problem getting these people in, these individuals vetted for this property. But, you know, we don't even have the opportunity to bring it before city council unless there's an amendment to the proposed resolution. So that's all. I understand the police concerns. I understand all of that. This is brand new. Okay, no one knows what's going to happen, but you have the process at the beginning to vet that. And if it doesn't work out, you can always do a special land use revocation. You know, it's notice and hearing. You know, just like any other thing. So I don't know why you have to stop the process for everybody else upwards of 2 years. If everyone waits the full 18 months to get open, then we have to wait for 6 months after that. We're waiting 2 years. They'll lose the property be foreclosed on. And so I don't necessarily know if it's really in the interest of equity to just hold all applications. I think it would. I mean, you have a process in place right now to vet people on the front end. I don't know why we would have to wait that long in order to process another application.
Thank you.
So that's all. Thank you very much.
Yes, good evening.
My name is Justin. Live here, 545 Ardmore Drive. Yeah, same scenario with them. I came into City Hall today and found out today I decided to come in and ask a question. I found out about what was going on today. My main concern with what I'm reading here and, you know, suspending, accepting, and approving new applications because of the people who are sitting on permits, I mean, very involved and very good standing in this industry, in this business, and I am in the know. I mean, you have people sitting here holding these permits hoping that the state is going to change the law, not because of any other reason. They're trying to hope and get grandfathered in or use some loophole that they don't even know exists yet. They're just crossing their fingers and sitting on a permit. One of these facilities is throwing money. You know, there's people throwing money at it that honestly don't know anything about it. There's people that just want to rent the building to hopefully fill it full of people that can grow, people that are caregivers, not people that are caregivers themselves. I mean, there's just, I don't understand why you would give someone 18 months to show good faith to use their permit. I mean, look at Ypsilanti. And this is for the police chief as well. The facilities that are open in Ypsilanti, if you speak with the police chief there, they would have nothing bad to say. I can speak from personal experience of Herbal Solutions downtown Ypsilanti on Main Street. Their business being there and his security system has helped downtown Ypsilanti be safer and has helped stop crimes, helped catch people that have committed crimes. They have nothing to do with the medical marijuana facility. Accidents, robberies, things like that, hit and runs, people trying to drive into the bank across the street. He gets all that on camera. Anytime the police chief needs to look at something or ask that man a question, he gives him a phone call, he gives him the video. He's done nothing but help the community. I mean, there actually are a lot of examples of how it affects the community, how it affects the police department. There is no extra burden. I mean, I understand the fear of the unknown is a great thing. Like, you have no idea, nothing to base it on. People are comfortable with their own personal experiences in making judgment calls. So to have never gone through it, I understand. But there are a lot of working models that can show these concerns. And 18 months, 2 years to do something with a permit, I mean, that's insane. Do you realize what can be done in that amount of time? Do you realize, like, this? I'm not one of these people that say this is some miracle drug that just automatically cures cancer or anything like this. But there are people out there that are not healthy enough to take narcotic pain medication. They're just not. They can't take an opiate. They can't take a Percocet, a Vicodin, and Oxycontin, but have to live with debilitating pain all day long. Nothing they can do. They try medical marijuana, it works. I'm a big advocate in that it can replace narcotic pain medications in those scenarios. It doesn't work for everybody, but for the people that it does, it is a life-saving thing. And 18 months to 2 years, I mean, people are dying waiting to get access to medicine. They're miserably dying, can't do anything about it, and you have people sitting on these permits, ruining it for people that are actually in the process trying to do it, are a productive member of this business, this community, and care, and aren't just about a quick buck. And, you know, it's very frustrating because someone who's trying to go through the process, and someone that would do the right thing, somebody that wouldn't stall for 18 months, 2 years, somebody that would, 60 days down the road, you'd be able to walk into a facility, you'd be able to see what's going on. I'm sorry, I'm starting to ramble at this point, but it's just very frustrating to me to look at this and to see people wanting to stall and make us wait for these people that have these permits that aren't doing anything. I think you should still accept permits, and I think that, yes, you should shorten the amount of time.
Just out of curiosity, what do you think the time should be?
Well, if you look at a working example like Ypsilanti, they have 60, I don't know the exact number, so don't quote me, it's 60 to 90 days. I know it's one of those. They have to start the process. They don't have 18 months or 2 years.
Gotcha.
They have a couple months. That to me is very reasonable. Like, when I look at this and I see 18 months, Like, to know what I've accomplished in 18 months, it blows my mind. Like, I don't even know how to respond to that. Like, people are sitting here and you're giving them that amount of time and they're not doing anything. Like, that's not a show of good faith. That's not anything other than stalling tactic to be able to hopefully wait and hopefully be adopted into some new state legislation, not just Ferndale. I'm going to
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right.
away from that.
Yep.
But
All right, thank you. I think you wanted to respond. If you'd like to respond to that?
When you asked how long is a reasonable time, City of Detroit says if you have a business closed for more than 6 months, they can revoke your special land use. And that's a reasonable time. You know, if someone's made the application, they have the plans, that means that they already have the tenant. All they've got to do is start the build out, at least start the build out to show that you're using the facility for the purpose that you said that you want to use it for. But 18 months is a ridiculously long time, especially in light of the fact that you say, okay, we're going to hold all applications also, because it puts an inordinate amount of time. We're going to be past November 2016 by the time that someone might be able to actually do something. And there's 2 ballot initiatives that are presently going. I mean, the city may have to revamp everything by then. You have a great ordinance right now. I think that you just need to stick with it. Thanks.
Anyone else who would like to address council? I see another gentleman. Yes.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
Members of City Council. My name is Paul Weisberger, 1238 Anderson Court, Clawson, Michigan. I want to tell you a little bit about our company first and where we are in the process in your community with your extensive ordinance. And before I forget, I do agree with both gentlemen behind me, 6 months or even less at a minimum to apply for a building permit and get started. Seems like a reasonable period. And I can hazard a guess, being actively involved in the state legislation that's going on right now, that the applicants that came before you came about at the end of the 4th quarter last year, because there was a similar bill proposed that was passed, I think 95-14 by the House with overwhelming support, did not go to vote in the Senate. But a similar bill has come about this year, 4209 and 4210, which will probably have similar support and has addressed many of the sheriff's and police chiefs' concerns as it relates to some of the law enforcement issues. That's an aside. I represent and I'm part of and a member of an applicant called Brightleaf Wellness Center, LLC. The principals of that group are the owners of Wild Bill's Tobacco, the 4th largest tobacco retailer in the country, Churchill Cigars with locations in Birmingham, Grosse Pointe, and West Bloomfield. We are a good corporate citizen in those communities. We deal with a heavily regulated product. This venture is a natural extension of tobacco, and we are not going to stand before you and tell you we're not entrepreneurs. We are. So what we want to do is provide a very high-class medical marijuana facility which provides consistent product, a variation of product for the patients. We're not oblivious to the state laws and the referendums that have been mentioned and what might come of those. But what we have done with your community is we have gone under lease at 1921B Hilton. We've been under lease since the 4th quarter of 2014. We've paid tens of thousands of dollars in rent. We've run through the process by hiring architects to submit site plans. We have filled out your application. It's quite extensive. We've paid the $2,000 non-refundable fee. We've submitted the plans. And we are not a wannabe applicant. We are an applicant. And so as an actual applicant who's followed everything, we're not on the doorstep to be an applicant. We are an applicant. So what I would suggest, and it may sound self-serving, but it's been done before where you have zoning changes and use changes where you do allow those people that have applied for site plan approval to continue through the process. It's only, in my opinion, equitable to do that. We have done everything you've asked us to do. We've paid money to one of your property owners for months on end at a great expense, and we've paid great sums of money in application fees and professional fees to become a corporate citizen here. And so because of that, what I would like to see is that you do hold the current applicant's feet to the fire. You do shorten it to 6 months. You hold me to that. In fact, you guys can hold me to 4 months to apply for a building permit and get started. We have significant funds. We're not here to wait and see. We will actually do. And so I would like to see that we take a deep breath, just because an ordinance is, a resolution is what we have in front of us, not an ordinance. But that just because Mr. Christ or the staff may have done a great job of drafting the ordinance, I would implore you to please not just adopt it because it's been drafted in front of you. And we would ask that you not cut off, with all due respect to the people behind me, I feel for them, and if you so choose to allow them to continue to apply, that's great. But I would say that we fall into a very limited number of people that have actually applied. And I think we make reference in here to numerous people that applications have been considered. I'm not sure how many people actually filled out the application, paid the fee, submitted site plans, and are under lease. I'm not sure. There may be one. We were told by Barb one. There may have been a miscommunication. Something might have changed in the last month, but we are, I think, a very narrow group. And so we would ask that you at least at a minimum, you at least allow those people that have completed the application to continue down the process, and you significantly shorten the time frame in which to put these facilities into motion. And I think then you may accomplish some of what you set out to do, as well as be fair and equitable to those that have been working on this project for 9 months. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Your time's a charm, yes. All right, one more time.
And
Yep.
That's not a bad suggestion, okay? But there are, that's great that they've leased space and they put a lot of money to it. My people are going out of pocket. The property costs almost $1 million. So for someone to say that they don't have sweat into it just because they haven't sent the application in, that's not necessarily the same. But along the same lines, there could be a time limit that you could add to this resolution to say, starting from now, new applicants have 60 days, 45 days, get your application in, because after that period of time, that way people who are involved in the process right now, they know. Like, if we're going to do this in Ferndale, we have a short period of time to get our application in because there's a window. But the window right now is potentially 5 minutes. And so I just ask that extend the window. Give people that do have skin in the game right now the opportunity to complete the application process and get the process started. And then say, okay, we're done. But people who are in the know are the people that have been in contact with the city, have the ordinance, have actually, I mean, if you want, you can put some type of requirement in there to show that you had an interest in property that you want to put this in prior to a certain date. But it's not putting the cutoff as to only people that have the applicants that applied. It's not a horrible suggestion, but you could expand the universe a little bit, make it a little bit more equitable, and you get rid of a lot of potential problems for people that actually have spent a lot of money and made a lot of commitments in order to do this. So that's just a suggestion. Sorry to keep you. I won't come up.
You're good.
Ask one question?
Yeah, sure.
I was curious, who decided and why did they decide at putting the cutoff at these 3 applicants that are in and doing this right now?
Well, no one's decided that yet. That's what we're going to discuss tonight. That's
Well-
just a proposal. It could be more, it could be less, it could be none of the above. But that's what council's going to discuss tonight.
Okay, well, I guess my question is, why propose these 3? Like, why
But we have 3 existing now.
I understand, but I mean,
right.
just curious, like, why now? Like, why after these 3 people? Like, why is this being proposed? Like,
And my guess is after the public hearing and council begins deliberations, you'll hear our reasoning for this or our discussions about this. Don't know how we're going to vote on it yet, but stay tuned.
okay, and then today, so if you guys were to vote on this today and you all said yes, I mean, what is that in effect right now as you vote on it? This goes
Yes.
directly.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments during this public hearing? All right, I will close the public hearing and now open it up for council's questions, comments, and deliberations on this item.
Question, I'm not sure who can answer it. What are the 3 applicants, where are we at with the 3 applicants in the timeline? I know the one at 9 Mile down near the Hazel Park border, that was our first applicant about a year and a half ago. And then there was a facility on North Hilton, and then one of the industrial side streets was our third applicant.
Correct, on East Lewiston. We've had three, and just for clarification or semantical terms, we've had three approved applications. So we have three applicants that went through the process that received their special land use approval and a site plan approval allowing them to move on to the next phases. Those, when you hear the three talked about, are the three that have been approved and are able to move on to the next steps in the process. The first one being 1915 East 9 Mile, where they have pulled building permits and started construction and the interior build process for their facility. The other one located on East Lewiston has started internal demo and does have plans in for review, but have not had any permits issued. And the other one on Hilton, we have not had plans submitted at this point. So those are the places in the process we are right now. And I think if it was asked earlier how many more applicants we have 2 more completed applications that are currently have been submitted and accepted by our department and under review. Those would be the 2 that would essentially be put on hold until the first one opens up. And that 6-month review takes place, and if everything goes forward, then those could be moved on for consideration. So we have 2 additional applications that have not been acted on or not forwarded to the Planning Commission for review yet.
And just adding on to that, so of these 3, when was the first one approved? And is that when the clock starts, or because they are grandfathered into, I mean, we are retroactively.
The way the ordinance provides is special land use approval runs for 2 years from the approval date and is required, the approved applicant is required to commence construction within those 2 years, or the special land use approval expires.
Gotcha.
So one of them has already undertaken that prerequisite by starting construction on the project, consistent with its plan of operation.
Right.
So the other 2 have.
The 2 have not.
So the other 2, the one provision of the proposed resolution would impact only the 2 that have not yet undertaken construction.
So let's talk about the dates of those 2 then. When did we approve those? Do you know? I'm sorry.
No, all within the last 6 months.
Within the last 6 months.
Correct. Both of them. I forget the exact order at this point.
But the first one was about a year and a half ago.
Correct, but they're already under construction and have commenced construction under their special land use permit.
Okay, my other question is one of a couple. Are all special land use permits have a time period?
2 years, correct.
All of them?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and in the ordinance, it's 2 years unless otherwise provided by council. So going forward, council.
We went with the normal special land uses too.
That's correct.
Right. Other questions or comments?
I have comments.
Okay.
As the city council liaison to the planning commission, I know that the planning commission is getting more requests to review special land use requests and site plan reviews, and would appreciate guidance from council, what our preferred policy is in relation to the number of applicants that are being received by the city and the ones that come through. So I believe at a couple council meetings ago we talked, or at least solicited feedback from an applicant who has a legal background in working with state legislation, that many cities are putting limits to the number of operations, and that Ypsilanti only allows 6 medical marijuana facilities in their community, so there is a limit there, and that other cities are considering limits too, as each city is navigating the clumsy state law. And so these limits help the city manage resources and understanding what these new facilities are going to mean to city services. And so I believe this was the workaround of instead of providing a limit per se, I think, on the 6 or how many we deemed was the right amount. But with the 2 applications already submitted, for me, I think it would be appropriate to allow them through, since they've already done their due diligence with the applications, which would take us up to 5 if they receive their special land use permit and have gone through site plan approval. So most of these, it is not guaranteed that a medical marijuana facility operator that purchases a property prior to getting a special land use permit is guaranteed of getting that special land use permit. And so it needs to meet the requirements of the application. So I would be open to honoring the due diligence that a business has already gone through to fulfill the obligations of our process, because they have spent a significant amount of money and have paid $2,000 for that application, correct? But I guess that the queue would start after 5 if those were allowed to come to Planning Commission review. So,
Well, I guess,
does that make sense?
yeah, but on that point about the money that's been spent to date, I guess I am sensitive to the $2,000 fee. I'm having a hard time, and maybe I'll look to Dan or for guidance on this. I'm having a hard time. I understand the considerable amount of money that has been invested by the one gentleman, that might be invested tomorrow if you purchase this property tomorrow, but absent an approved application, you have speculated that you may get an application. It doesn't strike me our responsibility that you have absorbed those costs. You've been purchasing a building since last year when you don't have an approved application. So I don't know what legal or even ethical or moral dilemma I should have for the expenses that you have incurred speculating that you may or may not get an approved application.
And you've been very
Okay, I mean, just to be very blunt about it, I'm sensitive to the $2,000.
I don't want to object. I don't want to.
I'm less sensitive to your speculation because you're a businessman and you speculate and it might win and you might not.
And I appreciate you've been very open to the public coming up after.
Yeah, which is not really technically allowed, and will.
But we have not purchased the building. We've leased the building.
Leased the building.
And the process is not short. And so most landlords don't, on a property purchase, they may allow you 6 months or so to go through and try and get your entitlement and get your special land use approval. In a lease situation, you have to, or get off the pot. You have to sign a lease. And if you sign a lease, you usually have to pay rent. And so we do pay rent. And so we do speculate in the sense that we don't know for certain we're going to get approved, but we have, what we did have in front of us when we signed that lease, and this is where it's not just the 2,000, is we had an ordinance that allowed it. And then we had an ordinance that allowed it that had very strict requirements on distance from other locations, distance from churches, distance from schools, and we met all of those. And so you don't have a de facto Ypsilanti 7 location limit. You have, you don't have a finite limit, but you do have a de facto limit in the sense that you can only go in certain industrial corridors. You have to be a certain distance away. And if you were to put that on a map, you're going to have a very finite number of locations. There's something down on 8 Mile, which these gentlemen may have. There's something in the Hilton corridor and a little bit on 9 Mile. And that's about it. And so you're not going to have this uncontrolled 30 dispensary where you have to be 1,000 feet away. And so because of that separation and strict requirement of the distance from schools and churches and other locations, we did step forward and say, you know what, we're going to be a good vetted out applicant. We're in the right district, and we're going to provide a professional product, and that's why we spent the money. And that's why we hired an architect, and that's why we paid the $2,000. So it wasn't just a seat of the pants, let's spend about $50,000 out right now and hope that it gets approved.
Okay, thank you.
Also, Mayor, I'm sorry, but you did ask a question, and I don't think it was a rhetorical question. You said, why should you feel this way?
Right.
Again, you had a set of ordinances that were out there. Now, you have to show, a lease, that is a property interest. That is the interest that you need to show as having a property interest in order to even apply for a special land use. You don't show a property interest, you can't apply for the special land use. So they weren't leasing a piece of property, they were buying a piece of property. They entered into a purchase agreement, which we can't back out of. It's a purchase agreement. We have an agreement to purchase a piece of property tomorrow. And we did this based in part on a published statute, by a published ordinance, on saying these are the regulations of this city. So, that's why. You need to, I understand there may not have been an application, but you can't put an application until you have an ownership interest in the property. You set a time to close on the real estate. We just happen to have the closing tomorrow.
All right, and I'm going to ask Derek, is that accurate? You cannot apply unless you have an ownership, you have ownership?
Yeah,
of
you
property?
either have an ownership interest or permission from the owner, which we do
Permission and
require, yes.
control. Okay.
I did want to point out, too, because
Okay.
the discussion regarding the special land use has been talked about considerably, and I'm surprised I'm going to do this, but I'm going to speak based on some of the conversations we've had with the police chief in regard to this. One of the criteria of the special land use permit to issue the permit talks about the ability to provide adequate public services in relation to the requested use. That's why the special land use is required. That's why there's additional layer of review and approval. And one of the questions that I've struggled with continuously through review of those applications is how are these uses going to tax the public services, including the police department. And the police department has made their recommendation known to our department and the planning commission throughout the process that they don't have adequate information to make that determination and feel comfortable making a recommendation until they've had the ability to see one open and then the impact that has on their police department. I know every city does it a little different, and I know the chief has been in contact with many of the people who were discussed here tonight. But they continue to recommend that they are not comfortable making that recommendation, that that criteria for issuance of a special land use has been met until they have the ability to see one of these facilities open and see how it works and make a determination on what that adequate policing is prior to making that recommendation. I think that's why the delay, that's why the ask on the change in the ordinance.
Fair point. No, it's our turn to debate now, okay? You know, when we're done, I'll give everyone one more chance, okay? But this isn't going to be a debate. We're going to deliberate, and then you'll have another opportunity, okay? Promise. Hold that question. Other questions or comments of council?
Mostly I have a comment of just sort of doing the numbers in my head as it relates to setting a limit and trying to balance the needs of our police department and understanding impact on staff or on resources. We have 3 approved already. We have 2 submitted applications, so that would be total 5, and it's my understanding there's 3 in the audience who would like to submit. That would take us up to 8. So who else knows what else is out there? So, you know, going up to 8 very quickly, I think would not address the concerns of some of our city departments. However, I was wondering if it's possible to get best practices on managing these facilities from other cities in terms of policing. We're not the first ones out the gate. I'm sure there's lessons learned from other cities that we can be doing in terms of preparing for managing these facilities. Have we explored what that is in other cities and what we could bring to bear on to the department, and what remains inconclusive?
Well, remains largely inconclusive, Councilwoman. However, we have done some of that vetting with some of the cities that have been involved. Ypsilanti being one of them. I've had several conversations with the chief of police in Ypsilanti. Detroit, there's no even point in talking to them. I mean, there's just really no regulation in the city of Detroit as far as the MML is concerned. Some of the things that we have learned is that there is no best practices at this point because there's nobody that has been doing it in one consistent way. The best that we've had, the best case that I've talked to is Ypsilanti, wants to do more and don't have the resources to do that. They do one inspection every 6 months, and it takes their organization. They do building. They bring in the building inspector, the fire inspector, the police department, and they inspect them all at one time, twice a year. And it takes them several days to do the 6 that they have. So they would like, and they find, and from the police perspective, he finds it to be very ineffective to managing the way we would like to do it is to manage it to make sure that we don't have any issues. And of the 3 of the approved licenses that have gone through, we've had ad nauseum discussions with the applicants as to what our contact will be, what they will provide for us, the access they will provide, and that's never been an issue. Everybody wants to work well with the city, and we would like to work well with them, but we have determined that in order to work with them appropriately, it will be a labor-intensive, what we believe to be a labor-intensive operation to do it correctly. If we're going to do it so it has meaning, so we keep track of, we may be lucky and get the 3 best applicants in the world that follow all the rules. But my experience says that if we keep going forward, I don't think that every single one of them is going to be the best entrepreneur in this area. There's a lot of room for fraud. There's a lot of room for drug dealing outside of assisting patients. There's all sorts of things that we would have to make sure didn't happen in order for these to do, for them to operate correctly and help the people that are medical marijuana patients. So, in our opinion, I admit that I'm the driving force. This has nothing to do with the approval of medical marijuana or whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. What really it is a capacity issue for the police department. We would really like to see one open so we could see what, particularly one that's going to have a grow, because one that is just a holding facility as we see them now, as opposed to one that's going to have a growing operation, and the amount of time and effort that will go into those 2 different, vastly different type of organizations will be difficult to assume, because that's what we'd be doing of how they would operate. And we also know that the state law is in a very precarious situation. There'll be new legislation that's been proposed, and this all may be for naught because it could change in the blink of an eye as to what it will be allowed and what won't be allowed.
Through the chair, may I summarize some key points, what I've heard from you?
Certainly.
I heard that the city of Ypsilanti does reviews. You would categorize it as a basic review. They would like to do more, but don't have the capacity to do it. Is there any problems that they're seeing from that in terms of not having enough capacity in order to do it correctly, in your words?
I can only give you an example that the chief gave me when I talked to him on the telephone. He said that during one of their inspections, he walked into the medical marijuana facility. They were doing their inspection, and while he was standing he was along with them, and while they were doing the inspection, an individual walked up to the counter and purchased medical marijuana from the man behind the counter. The man had a medical marijuana card, but he was not an associative patient to any of the caregivers that were inside that building. So basically, it was a drug transaction that happened right in front of the chief of police. Chief of police said he called the proprietor or the man behind the counter on it right away, and the guy behind the counter had no clue that that was not an appropriate way to transpire business. It was completely, there was no checks and balances whatsoever with the employees of that organization as to what he could or could not do. And they did not cite them for it. They used it as a corrective kind of a thing, but he was shocked and aghast that here's the people that have gone through the whole process. They're running the business, and the business themselves is selling marijuana to patients across the counter like it was a retail store. And that's not the state of the law in the state of Michigan at this point in time. Can't do that.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to entertain a conversation about the 6 month versus 18 months. I mean, the ordinance was written up as 18 months, but
right.
I'm wondering if most communities are only giving 6 months for these facilities to open up, that should be plenty of time.
And I share that frustration. I want to make the point that I understand why this could be seen as a moratorium, but for me it's exactly the opposite. We are a community that wants to see these operate and succeed. We did draw an ordinance before my time, but the council did, for this process. And we're frustrated because in the last year and a half, we approved one, and then we approved another, and then we approved another, and they're all sitting there and not really doing anything. I'm glad to hear tonight that the first one is actually finally starting to do something, but we're frustrated that we're giving out applications that are essentially being used for speculation and maybe the hopes that the legislature will change the law. We want to see these operate. We want to know how they work so that we can answer the question of how much city resources does it take to monitor medical marijuana facilities. So it's interesting to me that all of the folks in the public comment were supportive of shortening the time frame, because that's what we were trying to do tonight, is shorten the time frame. So I'm open to shortening it even more, because that really gets us to our ultimate goal, which is do it. Do it, show us how you do it, show us what kind of businesses you do so that we can judge what kind of resources we will need in the future to guide these things. So I am open to that.
Poop or get off the potty?
Well, as
I do have a question of the chief, though.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're sat back down, but it just came to me as we were having this discussion. You mentioned developing a process, to, what's the word you use? Not survey, to inspect, to do an inspection, formal inspection of these facilities. Is there any guideline by the state that says we have to check for this, we have to look for that? Has the state listed that there's a basic set of procedures, or is every community just basically doing whatever they want in regards to investigating facilities? And
remember, the MMML is a referendum and not a law. It was passed, by the citizens. They brought forward this, and it was largely undefined. And we went for quite some time while the judiciary is defining what the confines of the law are, not so much the legislature. Although the legislature now is coming along and may make some changes, maybe some drastic changes. But what we're dealing with is what the Court of Appeals and the Michigan Supreme Court has laid down as what you can do and what you can't do, what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. What our function is, and it's not like we're just sitting on this. We have looked at it from a staff perspective from the police department, and we have come up with some things that we would like to see to make sure that there is compliance with the law in regards to age appropriateness, who can be on, signage, all sorts of different things, and it relates to, there's things that we feel, just like a liquor license, that we would like to make sure that the applicants follow the rules. Many of them will, but many of them will because they know that we're going to come in and inspect them, just like our liquor license people, all nice folks. But I think that if you don't follow the rule, you don't show them that you're going to hold them to the rules, they may start cutting corners, and it's the slippery slope. If you start cutting this corner, well, you cut the next corner, and who knows where it goes. So we feel that we should have a proactive relationship with the applicants, with the proprietors, to make sure that they know what's appropriate, that we know what's appropriate, that we work together to make sure that all the rules are followed. So does the state issue a handbook on how this, we are still flying by the seat of our pants largely. But we're trying to do it, we may be resistant. We may be old school cops that, marijuana has been around and been illegal for many years, but we understand this is coming whether we like it or not. So whether we like it or not, we want to make sure it's done correctly. And that's really where our focus is. We would like to see one in operation, see how, what we will establish to be the best practices, because I really think that we're on the cutting edge of this. Regardless of what the city of Detroit is doing, or Flint, or Ypsilanti, I think this is largely, we are still cutting the edge of this kind of regulation here.
Thank you.
I wouldn't walk all the way to the back because I think you might be called on again. Because I have a question. I have a question of Derek. Derek, so the normal special land use permit process is 2 years.
Right.
I assume there's a rationale or a reason for that. There's things that you have to do after you get it. How At what point would it be unreasonable to say, no, that's not enough time to do the things that an applicant would need to do after they are approved for an application? In other words, what would be too short of a time to say you have to be up and running?
Understood. I think 6 months is the shortest amount of time that's reasonable, especially if there's architects, mechanical, licensed contractors, plumbing, interior build permits. 6 months would be an aggressive limit. Most cities, in my experience, a special land use permit runs about a year, which usually gives everybody ample opportunity to get the plans they need created, get through the process, and get any additional reviews and approvals necessary. In most instances, that also allows time to get the site plan approval, which could take several meetings. They're not necessarily run concurrently and approved at the same meetings. Sometimes that site plan process doesn't start until after the special land use is approved. So 6 months on the outside would be as short as I would say. A year is very consistent with what the normal special land use process is in most of the municipalities I've worked in.
And one other question. You mentioned that so we have 3 approved already and 2 that have submitted complete applications. Are those 2 the 2 gentlemen that are here that have made investments, or just one of those is, and then one is going to maybe? And
one of the gentlemen that spoke tonight is one of the applicants that is currently under review that has a completed application in, and that's being reviewed for technical compliance and to make recommendations. I don't think any of the other folks are associated with the other application we have in currently.
So they're not represented here tonight, and it might just be because they didn't know we were doing this tonight, but they have...
All of the applicants that are either approved, who would be impacted by the shortening of the special land use, or have the 2 applications that are in, were contacted personally by our department. So they're all aware that this is being discussed tonight. They were made aware of it previously.
So Seth, I have a question for you now, so I'll ask you to come up. Because you talked about this closing is actually tomorrow.
Yes.
So it's either good luck or bad luck. It's bad luck, but good luck. This isn't the day after you purchase the property,
correct,
right?
yeah. I'm glad we have an opportunity to have this dialogue
Right.
now.
So beyond the $2,000 application, you haven't invested in this property yet, correct?
No, but no, we haven't even submitted the application. We haven't been allowed to, but we've entered into a purchase agreement where if we don't go through with a purchase of the building tomorrow, we will be in breach and we will be sued. So, but when we were going through the process of vetting out which municipality to go invest in and enter into a purchase agreement with a seller of a piece of property that was adequate for our needs, at the time we entered into the purchase agreement, Ferndale was the choice.
Yep.
And so, but we can't back out of that now. We've entered into a purchase agreement. We have a contract to close tomorrow. We have a commitment from a bank for hundreds of thousands of dollars tomorrow. So they have gone out of pocket. They've had to pay a fee to the bank for the commitment fee, and it's more than $2,000 for this. So there has been an investment that has been made. And so all I'm suggesting is, right now.
No, you know what, I understand your suggestion.
Thank you
I
very
just
much.
specifically wanted to know that answer. Dan, were you going to say something on that? No, okay. Okay. Yes.
I just asked.
Please speak to the mic, though, so that the folks at home can hear you.
Yes, I just asked to highly consider shortening that for sure. Like, I think that's a great idea. Like he said, crap or get off the pot, perfect. Sums it all up. And the 6 in Ypsilanti, if I understand right, I don't think that was just them picking 6. I think zoning determined that cap. I ask you to do the same in Ferndale. Let zoning determine the cap, because he pointed out it's M1 or M2 zoning. You're going to have a cap very quickly. That's not going to be much more than 6. It might only be about 6 because you take into consideration you can only be so close to this or this. Zoning is going to create that cap very quickly. But I ask, let that happen. Don't just stop taking applications.
Appreciate it. And sure.
All right, so we actually showed up tonight. This is very important to us. We've been following it. We applied. We've gone through everything we're supposed to do.
Yep.
What's important here is that, as you pointed out, Councilwoman, there's no guarantee that we're going to approve. We still have to go through the special use process. You guys have a chance to have us kind of expose ourselves and show you who we are as a corporate member of your community.
And
I'm
our chief, and what I'm learning tonight is our chief, who has a portion of that process, is skeptical. So, you know what I'm saying? So
He is, and
Right.
there's no guarantees there's a guy running a bar who's going to run it right or not
Right.
overserve people, and this is a very similar process. It should be treated almost like that, like a liquor license review, an applicant, make sure they have the liquidity and they don't have a bunch of felonies and they know what they're doing,
Absolutely.
and we're going to meet that. I mean,
Right.
we're one of the best in the country at what we do. So I don't know about the other applicant, I can't speak to them, but they have no guarantee either. So what I'm really hoping is that what was mentioned earlier was that we don't penalize the two that are in the process, that you do vet us out, that we do have to go through the special land use process. But one thing that I do need to make a point, sorry.
I'm sorry.
One thing I do need to make a point on is the idea of shortening the current applicants and then us being penalized because they sat on their hands and wait either 18 months. I pay $7,000 a month in rent.
Right.
For me to wait 18 months, done deal. We're out of here. It's crushing. We can't do it. We want to do this project. If we have to wait on the shortest end for the guys that are currently under construction to complete their construction and then 6 months on top of that, I'm like $60,000, $70,000 more dollars. So this is not a cry me river type situation. We're well funded, but we're not idiots. So we really think it would be fair and equitable, of course, from my position, that you allow us to continue through the process, be vetted out by planning and city council, and let us continue on. And it's not, you're not opening up the doors to the world. And even if you did, I think you're going to cap out at about 6 locations of qualified applicants.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. One final comment.
I'm sorry.
All right. This is important, and I know it's
a lot of the talk tonight has been about what's commonly referred to as dispensaries, okay, and provisioning centers, okay. Okay, whatever you want to call it. For medical marijuana purposes, they're a place where someone can go, get their medicine, and leave.
Yeah.
Now, my clients aren't interested in that at all. They were just going to apply for a cultivation facility. I know that the chief said he was interested in seeing how one of those would work. That's all they were interested in doing. They're not interested in having a provisioning center at their location. And also, I was informed there's a $200,000 hard deposit that was put down. It's non-refundable. If we don't close tomorrow, they lose that. So there's real money on the line here based upon the published ordinances. And so those are 2 things I needed to let you know.
And one of our 3 is a grow operation, correct, Chief? The last one, or Derek?
Yeah, it's both. It's actually
It's both.
It's a facility that has medical marijuana, the ability for patients and caregivers to meet, and a grow operation.
Okay, thank you. So, what are your thoughts, council? I think we all are in agreement that maybe 18 is too long.
I think 18 is too long. I think 12 is too long. But I understand this is a different kind of facility, so 6 may be too short.
I'm looking at from, if I may.
Yes,
I'm
please.
looking from a build-out perspective, and that any entrepreneur who's going to overhaul a building is probably going to need more than 6 months to do build-out of a building, particularly if it's an old or obsolete vacant building in our industrial area. So to me, 6 months is kind of restrictive and unfair in that regard. So to me, the 9 months, 3 more months, to me, 1 year is more of a interest here. But if I may, I'd like to throw down a proposal in terms of this resolution, because it sounds like we need to amend it on timing. I think we're interested in honoring the intent of the resolution. I would be, and that is to make sure that we're providing enough space for the city to understand its resources needs for our city department in order just to take a step back and say, what do we really need after these open? It's clear that these facilities aren't opening up within a 6-month or 9-month or even 12-month time frame. And so this is sort of a little bit of a stick to get them to do that. And then I recommend that we reduce from 18 months to 12 months up for debate. And then I recommend that we honor applications that have been in process and paid to the city already.
In process and paid applications, which.
Could I just make a comment? And just for clarification, the existing special land use length, duration, requires commencement of construction. That's the 2-year period of time. Okay. This proposal proposes to shorten it to substantial completion of construction within the 18 months. And, I think if you're going to shorten the timeframe, you want to make sure you're talking about commencing construction or whether you're talking about completion of construction. And perhaps it's a shorter period of time to commence construction and a longer period of time if you're going to continue the text of the draft, which is substantial completion of the construction.
So 6 months to begin and 12 months to complete would be 18 months, or 6 months to begin and 6 months to complete would be a year.
I think the issue, if there's commencement of the construction, the concern regarding speculation is reduced because they will be putting additional monies into the development of the property. So it could be a shorter period of time, but it has to be commenced rather than the 18th month was get it done within that period of time.
Open the doors, 18 months.
Correct. Because there's a second component as it relates to the second paragraph of the resolution, which is the study period, the review and reporting component, which is a separate component. It's the next paragraph of the proposed resolution, which is the pause with respect to the process.
Well, and that's a good point. We don't want them to just commence construction. We don't want them to just finish construction. We want them to open and operate so that we can then see what kind of staff resources would we need to monitor that business. So the intent is to encourage people to open businesses.
Right. The speculation's reduced by the commencing of the construction, but getting them actually opened, that's the second step, and that's really the concern that has largely been raised by the police department as it relates to being able to give you a concrete assessment of what the costs are, legitimate costs are for enforcement going forward.
Yeah. What we're trying to do here is balance out making sure we don't overburden our staff, but yet making sure that we're encouraging businesses in medical marijuana facilities, which we've been very open and trying to make it work, given the inconclusive state law. Yeah. So, personally, I tend to favor more of a limit because that gives the space for the business owner to actually do what they need to do. And then wait for state law to change and then adjust. But that has nothing to do with this resolution. What's in front of us right now, to me it seems a little easier to manage. And however we come up with a limit versus through zoning, which I think is complicated in itself too. But what would that look like? I don't know. Because it sounds like we have a lot more businesses coming here because we have set up a friendly process. But we've also created an environment of speculation, of people being in queue, which isn't benefiting, which isn't just meeting the needs of what we thought would happen. So, I don't know.
So
I guess I'm trying to summarize here. And since I think talking about a limit would require more work. I don't know.
So you want to reiterate? No, I mean, I think you're out. I think that's where we're trying to get to. I think you're right.
Right? So, which does not putting a limit does not put us in any different situation than a city trying to manage this just like we are. We aren't an outlier in trying to do that. Actually, I think we'd be late to the table, given what's happening right now. But What are your,
I think I need more time. I hate to say that, but I'm not sure if I'm ready to make a decision tonight after hearing what a lot of people have said. The problem is that we have two applicants here that haven't yet submitted but are right in the process of. So if we don't make a decision tonight, they're going to be in the queue, and they may be disappointed if they come in front of the Planning Commission and/or City Council and we say no, you know, and they could have known tonight whether or not we were going to say no. I don't want to do that to them.
So I'm going to go back then, if I may, Councilwoman Piana, to your proposal before. Would you reiterate what you were sort of suggesting?
Well, and I just want to share one comment. You know, I'm one of the reasons that we're here is because the chief has requested that we put a limitation on the number of facilities, and his number was 3, and I'm not comfortable with saying that 3 is the right number. Yet I don't want to just open the door and let 8 or 10 applicants think that they can open up a facility and realize that we're unable to manage them from a police standpoint. I don't want to do that to our community.
right, but if we don't pass this resolution, we could potentially have 8 facilities in the pipeline.
Investing money, purchasing
so
property.
we're almost up to 10. So this really is talking about how do we manage limits. So even though I proposed limits, I think the intention of this resolution, going back to the 18 months, was a way to get around it by going at the speculation end of getting these medical marijuana facilities to open versus actually putting in a limit, which essentially creates a limit.
Sure, because eventually our limit may be 4 or 5.
Right. Right.
So,
Through the chair, you might want to approach it, there is really 2 issues. One, the first issue that sounds like there may be consensus on council is to shorten the special land use approval process for the applicants that have not commenced construction.
Yes.
And then it sounds like there might be agreement on that. You can bifurcate it, address that issue, and then see if there's consensus with respect to the second aspect of the resolution.
I know, but I'm still a little confused as the commence and complete. Like, do we need to then have 2 different periods? Do we need to say that to commence construction has to be this time period, and if you don't, you have this time to complete?
Commencement is typically polling the, having a building permit issue is commencing.
But that really happens when the special land use.
No, that's the special land use approval. The building permits typically aren't submitted for and polled until a later point in time.
And even the resolution as we have it said that work to start within 18 months, so.
That's the original.
That is.
Okay.
So again, just to reduce speculation, you could leave that word language and make it 12 months or 6 months or 10 months.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Councilwoman Piana. What you're suggesting is to change the language to 12 months to complete after the special land use.
yes.
Okay.
And
Derek?
does that strike you as reasonable?
And I think when you, just for clarification, I think when we say complete, we mean issuance of a certificate of occupancy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Which just allows a business, any business in the city to open. That would be what we define
Yes.
as complete.
Right.
Be C of O.
And does that seem, does 12 months to get a CO seem reasonable, overly aggressive?
Seems reasonable.
Seems reasonable.
And it's only as it relates to those 2 that have already been issued. Council, every time a special land use in the future, could modify that. This is not an ordinance change. This is a resolution.
That's right.
So special land use consideration, you could reflect upon that and modify the duration period as you see fit.
Yep. Okay. So is there consensus that 12 months to a CO is reasonable?
Yes.
Yes. Do we have to make a motion?
Well, eventually we do, but Dan's point is there's a second issue now, and that concerns the two folks that have applications, completed applications before submitted already, and then I don't know how we estimate the number of folks beyond that that may be impacted, but.
I proposed honoring the applications in process already paid as part of the resolution.
The two.
Yeah. Or we
One of which was not represented, one of which is not represented tonight, right?
Right, or we refund their money.
We don't honor money.
Appreciate that. Thoughts on that particular issue?
I'm fine with that.
Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Mayor, would you, I could read that second paragraph of the resolution reflecting that if you wish. I think.
You could, but now I'm looking at the chief, and I'm looking to see if there's any smoke coming out of his ears, because now essentially what we'd be saying is we would be dealing with 5 applications and not 3. Again, not 5 facilities because they're not open, but 5 applicants instead of 3.
Gone from 3 to 5, but we
Yes.
would still request that we still, before we go any further than that we would still have one open so we can still assess what it would take in order to operate.
Before we go further than that.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't, I'm still at 3, but I can't control that. You're the city council. But
Yeah.
I would still, the essence is that we still want to do an assessment, a real live, in-play assessment before we go any further than that, if that makes sense.
Any further than,
I can't stop you from going from 3 to 5.
I know, but
But I do request that before, if we do go from 3 to 5, that we are still leaving in the language that says we want that no more before we make an assessment as to.
For more. So it's a modest change as council's talking about not accepting new applications.
That's right.
Until one of the approved applications has opened.
So we would not have any applications in the queue?
they could apply, but they wouldn't be reviewed in a process.
Okay, so they could apply, it could be on someone's folder, and when the first one falls off the table, we can open up the folder and give them a call.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
And those 2 that have applied still need to go to Plan Commission and to council for their special land use approval. The Plan Commission may recommend or recommend denial, and then council will get to weigh in on those as well.
So now my question to you, Derek, is.
Well, wait a minute, I want to get.
Yeah.
Congratulate for my professionalism for not losing my mind as we went from 3 to 5.
Yes, you're good.
Okay.
We'll talk tomorrow.
So.
Thank you, Chief.
So Derek, now I want to talk about this 5th one, because you invited them here. They understood, right? Is that what you said? That the 2 people that have applications that are approved were invited and were notified that this meeting was happening
We have
tonight?
3 approved applications.
Right.
All 3 were invited.
Right,
and
those-
then
those-
And then 2 in the queue.
I'm talking about the 2
Yes.
you personally contacted.
Correct.
One of which.
Well, our representative of our department did.
Thank
not
you.
me personally.
One of which came.
Correct.
I guess now I'm curious what you think the status of the I'm curious that if someone has to have a controlling property interest, that they wouldn't have found this important enough to show up tonight. I'm having a hard time wondering why I shouldn't just say 4 and say that the person who didn't bother to come tonight clearly was not concerned enough.
We don't know what
to-
they're.
So I know, and I don't want you to speak
have a
for
relative
them,
in the hospital.
but you've dealt with them, so do you know what the situation is with that applicant?
Both of the applicants we have currently under review are making good faith efforts to meet the city's ordinance requirements. I wouldn't assume that their
Because they're
absence
not
tonight
here.
is not because they don't care or don't have any intention of following through. Both
Huh?
applicants have
Wouldn't
been.
assume that. Okay.
Yeah,
Fair
both
enough.
both
Fair enough.
applicants have
I'm-
made very good faith efforts.
Fair enough.
Good question, though.
Just fair enough.
Fair question.
All right.
We are going to vote, but we've heard your argument 4 times, sir. So are you making a motion?
I think I need help making that motion.
That's what Dan's here for. That's what he gets the big bucks.
If I
for.
could.
God.
As I understand council's intent with respect to the first resolved paragraph, it would be to shorten from 2 years to 12 months the special land use approval for those applicants who haven't already commenced construction to have substantial completion of their plan of operation.
A CO.
Yes,
Yes.
which is substantial,
Is
which
that
is
the same thing?
represented by a certificate of occupancy.
Certificate of occupancy.
The second resolved paragraph, I think the intent of council as it's debated is it is further resolved that the City of Ferndale City Council directs its administration to suspend processing of new medical marijuana applications until the City of Ferndale's ordinances, under the City of Ferndale's ordinances, until at least one of the 3 previously approved medical marijuana facilities has opened in conformance with its approved site plan and been open for a period of time. Now, you haven't addressed how long. The draft says 6 months. You know, it's possible you could shorten that time period for a report to come back to council. But it currently provides that
that's a good
new
question.
applications would be 1 opens in 6 more months.
We can revisit that another. I don't know. Is there interest in discussing the 6-month sort of review period?
That means that we would be at least 12 months out from opening up more applications. So effectively, we wouldn't be reviewing any applications for a year or more.
New, yes,
New.
beyond the 5.
Beyond the 5. For a
Except
year.
that my suspicion is one of the first 3 is going to hit that 12 months pretty quickly, and they don't seem to be doing much. So, I mean, the window's going to start when 6 months from now, not a year from now, because one of those 3 isn't going to do this, and so it's going to start quicker than that. And if they do it, that's good. That's what we wanted them to do. We wanted to motivate them to open. But my suspicion is that's why we're here tonight, because we've got people speculating with applications and not using them.
Okay. Okay. I'm
But-
open to that.
Okay.
I also know that we're going to amend this ordinance every time there's a change, or because this is what we do to our medical marijuana ordinance.
Well, we have to because the state keeps changing everything.
I know. I'm just saying. So we are open and flexible to keep my. What should I be saying? This isn't a done deal. It could change in 6 months. That's what I'm saying. I'm open to both.
Yes.
So what do we need to do?
I do have a question, though. Did we discuss the time period, and maybe we did and I missed it, the time period of the 2 existing, how long do they have before they can open? Are they grandfathered into the 12 months? Are they 12 months?
It started when their application was approved, is my understanding. Their special land use was approved.
So one has like 8 months and the other has like 3.
That's what I mean. These people's clock started now
Okay.
and is already ticking.
Okay.
They don't have another 12
They don't have
months.
another 12, that's what I
They have
wanted to
what's
make
left
sure.
of 12
Okay.
months since when they got their approval.
Okay.
You said you will accept them, just not review new applications until what you're voting on, the timeframe.
Right, but I guess my understanding would be, but if you're interested in it, get an application in, because then we'll go in, there literally will be a queue. There literally will be a queue, which now which I guess gets to, I don't know your last name, Seth, so I'm sorry, Mr. Tompkins' issue, which I'm very sympathetic to. I don't mean to be unsympathetic to it, but you're sort of in the queue now. You're making commitments based on something you hoped would happen, and I understand you did it based on this community and what we've indicated. But as difficult as it may be, I think you're only being put in the queue for a little while longer until we get one of these folks to get off the dime and operate. And I know that there may be a financial penalty for you, and I'm sorry, but it doesn't substantially change the position you're in today, which is you don't have an application approved yet. So you're in the queue and you're still in the queue. And I guess if you put it in tomorrow, you're ahead of the queue. I know that's not completely satisfactory to you, but yeah.
There's been a substantial investment that was made based upon
understand that.
this city's ordinances. This city speaks through the city council, and when it passes an ordinance, it says, this is how we operate in this city.
Right.
And it says to businesses, this is how we operate. And they have to go forward, and they have to do things based on due diligence of what the laws are in the city as they are published at the time that they enter into contracts. And when the city goes and changes an ordinance after someone's entered into a purchase agreement, it is inherently unfair. There are ways that this city could look at these situations right now, instead of being so draconian and saying, we are cutting this window off now. There was very little notice. We've been in contact with the city staff for months now on this. No one contacted us. If not for the fact that I did not contact city staff today, I would not have known about this.
I understand.
So we've been in the process, and it is very, I mean, and by putting a moratorium on this, I believe you are violating the Supreme Court's ruling. You are not allowing legal businesses to go forward and opening in this city. Once you've already established an ordinance setting forth this, you don't have anything revoking the ordinance. So you have an ordinance, you set forth laws to say this is how you do it, but we're not going to process your application. That's a moratorium. It's in violation of the state court law. I can understand why there is a significant concern about who's doing this, and especially from the police department standpoint, but they haven't, am I wrong? The police does have an opportunity to say, we don't like this applicant, deny it on the front end. You said it yourself, as part of the ordinance, it has to meet the police's ability, to actually police the facility. If there are agreements with the facility and the police department offering streaming video 24 hours a day, outside video surveillance, to do whatever is necessary in order to placate the police department's understanding of what needs to be done in order to police this premises, then they have an opportunity to do that on the front end. And the city says, you can say, if you bring in an application that has proof that you have tried to get this done before today, you can do that. You can even say, okay, we're going to make the effective date of this resolution the end of the month. Anyone who knows about this, it's only the people that are watching this on TV and are here today. So you have an opportunity to say, okay, and you said yourself, we realize that this is unfair. Okay, well, if it's unfair, you have an opportunity to make it fair.
I said it was unfair. I didn't say it was illegal, and I want to ask Dan, to the extent that the city would have a legal exposure from an applicant who doesn't have an approved application. Pardon me?
There's not an application submitted.
Right.
There's no vested right with respect to a proposed special land use consideration. So I think that there's little legal exposure with respect to that issue. That from a legal issue, I mean, the individual has asserted other concerns which go to other considerations, which Mayor, you noted as far as equitable issues, but from a legal standpoint.
Thank you. So are you prepared to make a motion, Councilwoman, with the help of the attorney, I'm guessing?
Yes, I am prepared to make a motion with the help of the attorney. So, Mr. Chris, how do I go about doing this?
Well,
well, we have to change the resolution, and then the motion is to approve the resolution.
Right.
Right. As my understanding is the resolution in the first resolve paragraph, the reference to 18 months in the fifth line would be changed to 12 months.
You mean the second paragraph?
Well, we're looking at the summary and background. You're looking at the now,
I'm
therefore,
looking at
be
the
resolved.
resolution.
So you're looking at, okay.
Resolution, page 2.
Page 2.
The first, therefore, be it resolved provision, line 5, the word 18 months be changed to 12 months. So it would read, the duration of the special land use approval for those applicants from 2 years to 12 months from the original approval date to have undertaken substantial construction commenced on the property in conformance with the approved site plan.
Okay.
In the next resolve paragraph, on the second line, after the word, the fifth word of, insert additional language, new. So it would read, it is further resolved, the City of Ferndale City Council directs its administration to suspend processing of new medical marijuana applications under the City of Ferndale's ordinances until at least one of the 3 previously approved medical marijuana facilities has opened in conformance with its approved site plan and special land use approval. You could put a period there, or you could continue that paragraph on, which talks about it continuing to be suspended until 6 months after the time period that one of the facilities has opened.
Well, I think that's still our intent, to judge the burden, if you will, of monitoring these
Okay,
establishments.
so then the balance, so then no period there, and then the reference to 18 months at the end of that line would be 12 months. There's no needed change in the next paragraph. And then in the final resolved paragraph, on the second line, shall not consider more new applications during the period approval has been previously granted for the 3 previously approved applications until one of those 3 has opened and been open for at least 6 months.
Marnie, do you have that? Dan will help.
Good tomorrow.
Yeah.
No, I thought
You
it was
will.
5. We were
Several
saying that
times.
we were saying for 5.
So that's what it is.
5 months, right?
No.
Oh, for 6 months, but
No, 5 approved.
yes. 3 are previously approved and 2, how did you word that? Yes. New. 2 new.
New,
right?
okay.
That's, yes. Where was the word new inserted, Dan? I'm sorry.
It was inserted in the second resolved paragraph.
Second resolved paragraph.
On the, as, after the 5th word. And in the final resolved paragraph on the second line, between the first and second word.
I'm sorry, but the
new.
first and second word is "it is."
No, the
Shall not
line on the page, so it says more applications, the second line.
New application.
More new applications.
More new applications.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it took me a minute, too, to realize what he was saying.
Thank you. Okay.
Lines.
So, Councilwoman Piana, is that the motion that you would like to make?
Do I have to repeat all that?
Nope.
Did you get that, Marty?
No. All you have to do is move this,
Yep, I got it.
adopt it as
All right.
amended.
I move to adopt the resolution regarding medical marijuana applications with the changes noted by our legal representation and by consensus by council.
Is there support?
Support.
All right. It's been moved and supported. Final discussion. Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmembers Piana,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
and Mayor Coulter.
Yes. Thank you. That item is adopted. Very good. Thank you. That moves us on now to the call to council. Chief, you'll be glad you stepped up because we're calling you first. Anything for the good of the community? Chief Collins.
Just a couple of things, Your Honor. As we know, this weekend is the Dream Cruise. And we want to welcome all the Dream Cruisers to town, but we want to remind them that this is an alcohol-free event, and there'll be no open alcohol on the sidewalks or in the medians, and we prefer that folks follow those rules, as well as that you understand that MDOT has backed out of assisting us at the closure at I-696 in Woodward due to expenses. So we we just want to remind the...
So we're going to bear those expenses? Or what? Apparently.
We're really happy with them, but they're out. But we do want to remind the motoring public that the closure will happen on Friday night at 10 p.m., and we will close Woodward Avenue at 696 at 9 p.m. on
9
Saturday.
p.m.
So enjoy the evening up until 10 and then 9 on those 2 nights, and then please go back to where you belong after that.
Tactfully put, Chief.
Best I can.
That's
And one other thing that I wanted to bring to public attention, we were going to be putting out our police department, our fire department, the Berkeley Police Department, and Public Safety Department, I should say. September 11th this year, it falls on a Friday. It is the first home football game at Ferndale High School. And we have partnered with the Feel Good Foundation in New York City, who is a 501c3 organization in New York City that assists not the first responders that perished at the September 11th tragedy, but the folks that helped out at the 3 sites and that have now are now suffering different respiratory cancers from that. So we are donating. We'll have representatives from the Feel Good Foundation at the football game. We'll be donating the gate to that foundation. They'll have representatives there. We hope to have Berkeley Police Department and Fire Department and have quite a competitive little game against our boys and the Berkeley kids. So there'll be more. We'll have Kara from the Community Engagement Department is going to be assisting us getting the word out. We'll be selling T-shirts for entry into the game, and we want to see a sea of gold on one side and a sea of blue on the other to see if we have a real good Donnybrook, if you will, Friday the September 11th.
I think I need to get a bet with the mayor of Berkeley going.
Now, that would be much appreciated.
I like that.
We're trying to get Berkeley motivated into giving us a hand.
I know the mayor.
I believe that Detective Moore will be singing the national anthem again.
Awesome.
So it will be. We're going to put on a show to to commemorate the events of the day. Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Chief?
Oh, Chief?
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 Will you allow council to ride in the Lights and Sirens show again this year?
Yes.
Thanks.
Actually, I believe that somehow Michael Leary has talked the police chief of the city of Detroit into cutting the ribbon for the police and siren. I don't know how he did it, but I met Chief Craig at when we did that multi-jurisdictional arrest, and I told him about it. He had no idea that he had already been committed to that. He knows now.
Excellent. Okay. Fire Chief Sullivan, you've endured 3.5 hours of meeting. You have nothing for the community. All right, thank you. Jill, anything from the Recreation Department this evening? Nothing. Thanks for being here. Well, we have a board member from the school district here. Raylan, anything from the school district that you'd like to share? Don't mean to put you on the spot. All right. Derek Delacourt, anything else from Community and Economic Development? Nothing else. All right. Anything else from the DDA, Cindy? No. Okay. Did I miss? Oh, there she is. She's hiding. Okay. Jenny, anything from the HR department this evening? All right. Acting City Manager Joseph, anything from the? Assistant. Assistant City Manager Joseph, anything? All right. Lloyd, I think you do have some. I think you do have something because I've been staring at it for 3.5 hours. I'm guessing you're going to tell us what this sign is about.
Not realizing this meeting was running so late, I skipped dinner and my mind keeps wandering back to the pork chop. Council also, but I'd like to take this moment to bring attention to some of the work that the DPW sign shop has done. You may have noticed a prototype of a sign. This sign was created entirely in-house, designed in-house.
I don't know if we can get this on camera at all. How heavy is it?
Pretty heavy.
Oh,
is
all
it?
right. I was going to move it to get on camera, but I won't if it's heavy.
There's a story behind that. I challenged the sign shop to come up with a low-cost prototype of signage that we could use, on city properties. Little did I know that they would come up with a sign that I was proud enough to bring here to council. The sign itself is actually made out of recycled material from the material that we took down from the hockey rinks. So it's very durable.
That's why it's so heavy.
It's been shaped and routed, and it's actually been clear coated like you would an automobile, so that it'll hold up. It's UV.
Oh, and we've got it on camera. There it is.
And the
Yes.
total cost of this sign is well under $150.
That's awesome.
So I was just astounded, and obviously you can see the shadow of the photograph in the background. That can be anything you like. In fact, they've already proposed one for the DPW with the Ferndale F and Department Colors with a snowplow in the background to the shade. So what will happen is this will be brought to the next Park and Rec committee meeting, most likely we'll be installing those at least at the top line.
Love it.
Love it. It really looks high end, and please give our kudos to the DPW workers
Jason
who
Hodgson in
make
particular
them.
has been doing some extremely creative work. He was the one who designed the native plant sculpture out in Seattle. And so the department has got a real win in this situation. I mean, a similar sign like that commercially would have ran well over $1,000.
What a good use of those materials as well that we didn't really know what to do with. So.
We lead the pack with recycling,
Yep.
and we have plenty of material, particularly since we're going to remove another rink here shortly.
Gotcha.
Quick update on the dog park. I've been told the hardware is in, and we are scheduled this fall, a firm date for installation of the fencing on the 19th. And DPW will continue to do site work. We have water lines to run and all kinds of other things. So in addition, we have some meetings to discuss wireless remote control, Wi-Fi control. So taking a little bit longer than I'd like, but once we get started, it'll happen very quickly, similar to what we did at Garber Park. Also, we have a lot of irons in the fire when it comes to parks. We have work that's going to be completed in the last quarter on Fair Park through the grant that the CED department obtained for us. So we'll be doing that. We're going to work on the dog park. We're going to try to, I don't see any problem with us completing the Marine Tot Lot. We've done Garbett. So what we're going to do is, starting in a meeting in September, we'll give a more extensive description of the work that we've accomplished, and then provide council with regular updates at least quarterly.
Okay.
All right?
Excellent.
That's
Thanks.
all I
Marty.
have.
Appreciate it. Marnie, anything from the clerk's office this evening?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
All right. April, anything from the city manager's office?
All set.
No. Dan, anything else from the legal perspective? All right. Councilwoman Piana.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to the Dales Neighborhood Association for hosting their third annual block party in Garbett Park, which went over really well because everybody loves the park equipment, and we had a really great time with new residents coming out and meeting others. And so also thank you to Councilman Greg Pollock for coming and talking with folks and having a hot dog or something like that. I also wanted to say that I'm honored to announce that I've been nominated to sit on the Michigan Municipal League's Board of Trustees, and will be voted in September at the Michigan Municipal Conference. So I look forward to serving Ferndale in this statewide capacity, as lots of things are going on at the legislative level that impact Ferndale, but also representing the cities in Southeast Michigan and the interests of cities across the state of Michigan.
That is quite an honor. I don't know, I'm not a historian, so I don't know if Ferndale's ever had a member of its council on the board of MML, but congratulations.
Thank you. I'm not really sure who nominated me, but I'm very happy to be
awesome.
nominated. So
It's great.
and then I wanted just to make a comment about our new streets. Love the new new street treatment for East 9 Mile, getting lots of great feedback from those changes, particularly the bike lanes and the green conflict areas. And I really appreciate our communications director putting out a little bits of educational information on Facebook, informing residents what those mean. But I really wanted to say, you know, changing our streets, yeah, it's a change, and it takes some time getting used to. When the bike lanes went down on Hilton years ago under Tom Barwin, that, you know, was a change to the street and caused a lot of people to question what was happening and why. And then we did it to Livernois, and then to West 9 Mile, and all these changes to the streets were being asked by the residents and the business owners, and this is all about creating safer streets and a calmer street. And it does take time to getting used to, and but I think overall the benefit for the community and residents is really about making a safe place for everybody to navigate our community. And that is it.
Excellent. Councilman Pollica.
Nothing except I do want to congratulate Councilwoman Piana on her nomination to MML. the board. And the only other thing is, when it comes to Lights and Siren Show, I'm 12 years old. So sorry about that.
Well, and the same for me with Eddie Munster. I'm pretty sure he doesn't look anything like I remember him, but Eddie Munster, people, is going to be here on Friday at 5 o'clock to help us cut the ribbon. April's laughing because she's not old enough to appreciate that, but if you are of my age, so I want you all to come out and welcome Eddie Munster to Ferndale. That's very cool. This Friday at 5 o'clock, we'll cut the ribbon for the Dream Cruise. I want to congratulate all the folks that put on Transgender Pride last weekend, and unfortunately I had to go out of town, but we did a proclamation, and Councilman Martin and Polika were there to, and Piana, I'm sorry, I didn't realize all three of you were there to represent the city. So congratulations on a successful Transgender Pride, and with that, our meeting is adjourned. Longest one ever.
Okay, it's almost 4
What do you
hours.